else rising to speak? Seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council. And I'm looking for a resolution to pass this, or a motion, I apologize, to pass this resolution.
I put in a motion for the proof.
And I'll go ahead and second that. Thank you very much, Councilmember Ting. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnett.
Aye.
Councilmember Ding.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
And Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Great. So we're moving on to the public hearing. Oh, no. Yeah, we finished through consent calendar. So we're moving on to the public hearing, introduction of an ordinance amending chapter 5.36 of Sonoma's municipal code permitting and regulating commercial cannabis business to allow a second retail storefront commercial cannabis business to operate in the city. I'll go ahead and turn it to our planning and community services director, David Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Before you tonight are two things. Number one, the introduction of an ordinance that will allow you to have two retail storefront commercial cannabis businesses in the city. Probably one of the shortest ordinances I've ever written, just changing one number, that being from number 1 to 2. That being said, your council could introduce the ordinance tonight and then adopt it in 2 weeks from now, and then it be effective in 30 days. The reason I mentioned the timing on that is because also in your packet, the second thing for tonight is to look at options that have been provided to you to determine how you would then select, should you wish, that second proposer in order to have that second dispensary, if you will, in the city. So just very briefly, I'll go over those 4 options for you. The first one in your packet that I've identified for you is creating a process, a new process. It may or may not be similar to the one that we had during 2020. It would involve preparing an RFP, sending out that to the cannabis business or industry, if you will, and having them submit requests or proposals, and then possibly hiring HDL and going through some other process of a staff review as we did previously. You recall that we had a ad hoc committee on that from your city council. The second option would be to then contact the 9 unsuccessful, if you will, proposals from the first iteration. Obviously, Spark would not be contacted, so that's where your 10 come from, to see if there remains any interest. Another option for the council would be to go to the city manager's top 5 list, which had been the result of the review of the 10 proposals previously. And the last remaining option for you would be to go to the runner-up or the final finalist selection of Justice Grown, that particular business being the one that went toe-to-toe, so to speak, with Spark as it went through your cold version of the top 5 from the city manager. So again, as I said, the ordinance could be introduced tonight, and then your city council could then determine a process which probably would have to select or award your conditional certificate after the effective date of the ordinance. This concludes staff's comments and report, and myself and Jeff will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do you have questions from council? Councilmember Barnett.
I guess my first question would be, well, this isn't necessarily a question for staff. I guess it'd be a question for council. I was not on this council when a decision was made to move forward with a second dispensary, but I was watching that meeting, and one of the reasons to move forward was the idea of competition. We didn't want a monopoly, and we wanted to provide competition within the the economic unit that is the city of Sonoma or Sonoma Valley. Since that decision, we've discovered or found out that a cannabis dispensary is proposed for Land Drive. I hear there's one coming in Kenwood. And so I'm wondering if the council still wants to move forward with the second dispensary, since we conceivably will now have competition within the Sonoma Valley.
I have the same feeling about it, and I support having a second one.
Other comments from council? I'd certainly support allowing a second dispensary in the city of Sonoma.
I mean, I didn't anticipate any changes. I was just curious if we seem to have new information since the decision was made.
Certainly, yeah. That does change it. It's not, competition is a factor. It's also just allowing a business that I think should have been legal for a long time, the ability to operate. We have 20-something tasting rooms. We have 10 or 12 banks. We have numerous places to purchase alcohol and lots of places to purchase tobacco. So having just one inside the city limits I'm talking about. So for me, I don't find two to be too much or anything like that.
Nor do I. I was just asking a question.
Yeah, no doubt. Other questions from council?
I support, as before, this is a trend, and also we do have this kind of policy. But right now, environment has been changed a little bit. As you know, recently, and a couple of the dispensary in the store would be at a setup around the city. And the council already mentioned, one is in Kenwood, in the Kenwood courtyard. It was approved from the SVCAC last year when I was a commissioner over there. And another one is the Mahjong and Arnold Drive. That is the old enough firehouse. So in this way, this is the market. It's kind of, the mixed. It's not like only in one store in our town. So right now, a lot of competitor. So that I concerned about our local developer and landlord and operator for this kind of dispensary store. If not out in the city, and when we carry out the policy, if possible, and offer a little bit of help, and a little bit flexible and favorable, let it go. And then because this is the trend and it's legal, and a lot of people are looking for that. And also, I want to see our local business parties and try to enjoy the business, especially and a new business, and try to get a little bit more benefits. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I don't have an issue with the second dispensary. I just wanted to make sure the council still wanted to do this with the new information. So, and it appears that is the case.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, for me, the big issue is staff time. That's my biggest concern is going through a long period, a long process. If we open the doors completely, I mean, I have two thoughts on this, right? And maybe we're not in comment time right now, so I can, if we want to move. I see Jeff Walter shaking his head. So
I think we need to open a public comment.
all right. So are there any other questions from council? Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. I see Fred. Mr. Albach. Oh, you were open and then we cannot hear you right now.
Okay, here I go.
There you go.
I've been laying out of the cannabis discussion, but I feel moved to make a comment on the competition issue, and that I don't. Every time I've heard that there's going to be more competition, I never see prices go down. Prices always go up, no matter what. And so I would be really interested to see if anyone could track the price of this stuff. And then so these guys are going to fix the price and keep it high. That's what they always do. So I think the whole idea of competition is not going to work. And so I'll bet somebody that these prices won't ever go down, even if you get more of them. So that's just a comment on that. I don't really have an opinion on 2 or 3 or however many.
All right. And we got Josette.
Can you hear me?
We can indeed. You're
Okay,
up.
it's Josette Brosiker, 1110 Loma Court. I have been hearing some buzz lately from various sources that we really do not need to approve a second dispensary in the city of Sonoma. Some of the arguments cite what I would call alternative facts. Let's first look at the idea that a dispensary will be up and running at the Lowy Firehouse in Glen Ellen. This goes to County PRMD on April 8th. The real facts are that the neighborhood is well organized and vigorously opposed. In addition, they will most likely have the support of Susan Gorin. The mention of a dispensary project at Fremont being in the works is totally false. This applicant has many issues and problems and is nowhere near a stage of being viable. If you would like to get a feel for both of these applicants and projects, please watch the 2018 Citizens Advisory Commission meeting again, and you will see what I mean. And last, yes, there may be a viable option in Kenwood, but it will most likely be years before it is up and running. The city is in a unique position. You are ready to move forward quickly and benefit all of the valley and the city itself. You have your terms and conditions in place. You have one operator and location well in the pipeline to being a reality. You have another vetted location available for the next set of applicants. If you move forward quickly with applicants for a second dispensary, you will not only give those of us that need this as a medicine a choice, but provide tax revenue and jobs for the city. And last, this idea of what is medical versus, hey, I just want to smoke a joint, should really not be part of the discussion. For those of us that need cannabis for a normal, pain-free, and productive life, it does not matter that California now allows adult use and that most dispensaries will serve both types of clients. The only difference is now we do not need to get a doctor's certificate. Those that bring this up keep citing experts. We, the dispensary clients, are the real experts. They should ask us what we need, what we use, and why. And I just want to, if I have a minute, I want to add this because of Fred's comment. Competition is not just about pricing. Competition is about products.
30
and what
seconds.
products people carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josette. And next we have Richard Silver.
Greetings and salutations. Can you all hear me?
We can indeed.
Okay. Well, happy Easter Monday. I have two comments. One very quickly is that if the city has, which already has decided to have a second dispensary, you already have the process in place to modify your ordinance and to have applicants merely fill out the state application. It's equally comprehensive to the cities. And for any interested applicant merely to apply, you will have to review the applications as you would for anything else that requires city ordinance. And therefore your staff time can be kept to a minimum. There's no need for additional outside consultants. I strongly hope that you will just make it available. Interested parties, please apply, see the ordinance, see the link to the state of California's application form. We're using that in phase one. It has a few modifications specific to Sonoma. And so you could move forward with that without a lot of rigmarole. If you do that and expedite it, you should be able to have a second selection, go through your process, and be deep into the permitting and planning department with the possibility of it being open by the end of this calendar year. That's your choice. Finally, regarding competition, Fred, sorry, I disagree with you. The taxes currently imposed on any cannabis dispensary can only be described as onerous, and somewhere between 24 and 30% of a retail price. That's why the prices are high. As far as saying we don't need competition, following on Josette, the more dispensaries, the more choice any individual has for either medical, recreational, or both. And that benefits everybody. Monopolies, particularly those that are state-sponsored, which is what the city has now, do not serve anyone well. They lead to price gouging, even more so, and limited service of client needs because they don't have to interact because they have a monopoly. Just look at PG&E. So I welcome the input from other parties, but clearly Sonoma's on the way to meeting the needs in this most vital area for its residents and visitors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak my piece. And Madeline and the rest of you, I still have that strawberry ice cream.
Yay.
Okay, thank you, Logan, gentlemen and gentlewomen. That's it.
Thank you very much, Richard Silver. I was a little worried we'd bring you in and it'd be Milton. We'll go ahead and move on. We've got Gil.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All righty. Gil Latimer, Grant Court, Sonoma. Good evening to the City Council. First, the Sonoma Valley Cannabis Group and many, many residents of Sonoma Valley would like to thank the City Council for moving forward on the revised cannabis ordinance. A broader market will provide more choice, better product availability, competitive pricing, and additional community services and benefits. We also extend our appreciation to staff for its hard work in facilitating all that's been accomplished so far. We'd also like to send a quick shout to the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Growers Alliance, Alexa Ray Wall. We thank her for her letter to the City Council, strongly supporting the removal of restrictions and hurdles demanded of cannabis business operators. But back to the business at hand and our revised ordinance. My question, and that of many other supporters of this ordinance, is why must we limit ourselves to one of the four options? Let's think outside the box here. There has to be a way to accelerate a new process which also allows for fresh applicants who could prove to be a better fit than those original top finalists. I'm sure other jurisdictions have found themselves in somewhat similar circumstances and decided it was time to take matters into their own hands and plot a solution. Again, it shouldn't be necessary for cannabis business applicants to satisfy so many more requirements than any other business, especially in light of the fact that the state of California already has regulations and application forms in place to license cannabis businesses. Some council members have recently expressed an openness to new proposers that wish to submit an application that were not able to do so the first time around. Our only option one allows for this. And at the same time, many on the council would prefer not to have to start from scratch. We feel strongly that the city does not need to be bound by paid outside consultants or unnecessary staff time in a complicated process. We think it's very possible to bring new proposers into a much more streamlined process that, as Richard said, could permit a new dispensary by the end of the calendar year. Our group, the Sonoma Valley Cannabis Group, has over 200 members, many of whom are experienced industry professionals who are ready to assist you in finding a creative solution that satisfies the council's need for saving time and expense and benefits our Valley citizens. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Gil. I see Eli Melrod.
Hi, Mayor Harvey and council members. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Eli Melrod. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Soulful. We're a Sonoma County-based adult use and medicinal cannabis retailer located in the city of Sebastopol. And the topic of one versus two dispensaries really resonates with us because we actually were the second dispensary that opened in the city of Sebastopol when the city decided to increase their allotment from 1 to 2 due to concerns about creating a monopolistic type situation. So first and foremost, we'd like to express our strong support for allowing a second dispensary in the city of Sonoma. And based on our experience in West Sonoma County, which has a similar population base to the Sonoma Valley, we've seen 2 dispensaries be able to be successful and really flourish in the city of Sebastopol, that being Spark as well as Soulful. We also wanted to, encourage and advocate for the city allowing to opening up the selection process to new applicants. We appreciate the desire to make this a very efficient review period, as a lot of time at both the council and city staff level was spent on the first process, and we just want to let the council and mayor know that we are ready and willing to meet any schedule, condensed timeline, or response period provided to allow new applicants. And we're hoping that the council and city staff may be able to come up with an abbreviated and efficient version of a process that could allow new applicants, particularly local ones like Soulful, who already have an existing customer base in Sonoma. We serve hundreds of customers who drive all the way from the town of Sonoma out to Sebastopol. We've done a lot of work with the Vintage House, the senior center community in the town of Sonoma doing cannabis education. And we feel strongly that Sonoma would be a wonderful fit for Soulful. And we just wanted to put that out there and really say that, we are very interested and willing to meet whatever timeline the city deems necessary, and really appreciate the concerns around staff time and resources, as we understand that, resources are limited and there are many, many priorities. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, Mayor Harvey and council members and city staff, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Eli. Seeing if there's anybody else rising for public comment. I'm seeing none. Oh, we have David Eicher.
Nope, I done unmute myself. Yes, David Eicher here in Loma Court. I just wanted to talk briefly about the competition, because the competition is not just for setting prices, but also selection. As I personally don't take any marijuana. I tried it once for a pain issue. It didn't help me. But in any case, I've seen Josette has a product that she uses that helps her, and if it's not available in everywhere, and so if you have multiple dispensaries, you have more chance to find the products that work for you, because the products do differ, can differ greatly. And another thing that no one's mentioned yet, although I think I mentioned it before, it have to do with shutdowns of a dispensary. It could be shut down for a day for, say, a water leak, or they had a fire, or was what happened to Mercy a couple of times. And hopefully it never happens again, which was because of the coronavirus. They had an instance with, they had to shut down and clean. And so having a second dispensary close by would be advantageous for that. And also in terms of the other dispensaries that supposedly in the works, we don't know which ones, if they ever will make it. They haven't even been approved yet from Planning Commission, and you can have, oh, my cat also wants to speak up in this. And so anyway, like to say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So you can't count on any of the other dispensaries in the valley coming to fruition. So I do urge the city council to move forward with a second dispensary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else rising for public comment? Seeing no one rise, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council. I'm looking for council member comments.
I can make a comment.
Go for it, yeah.
I guess I'd just like to say I'm glad that we're bringing this back, and thank you to all the public commenters. Number one, I think in addition to the competition argument, that these businesses and this industry are going to create a lot of great jobs, which is something I really care about. And so, and the wages that are going to be required here are going to be higher than in other places. And I'm really excited about that. And just in light of the groups of people who have been historically imprisoned as a result of the criminalization of marijuana, I think it's a good opportunity to help people in those communities that have been disproportionately affected have good jobs. So I think that's something that's really important to me. as a fundamental principle. So that is another reason why. And also, I think as a general statement, the war on drugs has been a complete failure and really decimated a lot of communities. And so to the extent that we are anti that and we are helping to normalize this, I think it's good. So I support having two. I want to amend the ordinance. I think we should go out on a new RFP and see who's interested. I would support hiring a consultant to manage that so we don't burden our staff, but I would not want to use HDL again.
So are you looking for a new process entirely?
I don't know if somebody else wanted a new process, fine, but I'd be happy to use our old process, but just a new consultant.
Okay.
But if somebody else wanted to change the process, I'm open to that.
Yeah.
I would look, you guys were all familiar with the last process. I would like to look at it, but from what I understand, part of that process, you needed significant financial backing. And that sort of made sense. Obviously, you didn't want the first dispensary in Sonoma to fail. But if there's a way we could find opportunities for local Sonoma Valley entrepreneurs and small business owners to participate that may not have that kind of financial backing, I would love to be able to look at the process to encourage and support that. And so I agree with Councilwoman Harrington. I agree with a lot of the public commenters that I would love to open this up to new applicants with a focus and encouragement of local Sonoma Valley applicants. And so to that extent, of the 4 options in our council agenda packet, I do support option 1. And how that plays out, I think that's up to us, obviously, but I do think we should open it up to new applicants. I do have concern about staff time in terms of timing, as Mayor Harvey has already discussed, and I'd like to see what the rest of the council thinks about that.
Okay. David, are you trying to talk? Because we can't hear you. Are you talking to somebody else?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for catching the lip reading there. I do have the prior process for you that outlines the steps. Would it be okay to share screen with you just to take just a couple of minutes for the benefit of Councilmember Kelso there?
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, let me see if I can just pull that up real quick. Can you see the screen, sir?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Great. So you may recall in December of 2019, we created the process, adopted the guidelines, the administrative regulations as a staff with the help of HDL. We then created the first phase, which was the RFP process, where we opened it up to the world, so to speak, from January the 3rd to February 21st. And we could certainly do some targeting, perhaps. I'm not quite sure how we would do that. Perhaps with the help of some of the people that we've met along the way to date. We then had HDL do an initial ranking, provided that to staff. We then convened a project review committee, which consisted of HDL, myself, the police chief, and the city manager. And then we created a process where the council could make its selection with the city manager's top 5 list. And along the way, we did have some dropout from the first 10 proposers. 1 bailed before we got to the top 5. And of that top 5 of the city manager's process, 1 bailed at that point. We then allowed the successful folks to, or at least in that last pool of 5, then search for a site. We now pretty much have that dialed in, but still there's some interest in other sites that now may be available. And then we then prepared a staff report for the city council, at which point the council selected Spark and Justice Grown to go to the August phase 2, if you will, where there was an award of the conditional certificate. We're currently in the process with Spark in this area, Mr. Mayor, where we have the Planning Commission reviewing the use permit. We hope to have that started this Thursday, but we need additional information to help on the categorical exemption analysis for infill that we're working on. Once the Planning Commission issues a use permit, the next step in the process would be to have an applicant then get building permits, conduct those improvements, if you will, depending on the site and also the building that's chosen. And once all of those permits and issues have been satisfied, there is a ministerial process, if you will, to apply to the city manager for a commercial cannabis business permit, which is quite a fast turnaround. Just double checking to make sure everything is done, the right paperwork and things have been satisfied for the city manager, and then the business can then operate. That concludes my short presentation on the process. Now, we could be as staff returning to you with an abbreviated process. We can cut some time out on the RFP. We could do the initial paper ranking ourselves. We've got a little bit of experience internally. There might be some savings of time there. But certainly the process from January did take until the fall of this year. That concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to take this off and stop share.
Thank you. Throughout that process, what do you think, if you could think of a principal barrier that an entrepreneur with less capital financing would face or would be difficult to jump over? Is there anything that is a glaring piece of that? Difficult?
The process that we charged here for our time through cost recovery, Mr. Mayor, was $11,000, and the applicants that did propose, or the proposers, didn't really seem to feel that that was a barrier. What was a barrier was the time in which it took them to go through the process. And as I said, two out of 10 bailed before the process concluded.
Do you think a $10,000 fee would be a barrier for a small local entrepreneur? I mean, they weren't a problem for the people that applied, but a lot of people probably didn't apply.
Well, application fees to recover our costs are important. And if that magic number is 10,000, and let's say we only spend 5,000, we can certainly give a refund. But I'd like to think that an $11,000 or $10,000 application fee wouldn't be a barrier.
I don't think a $10,000 between you and applying is that can't be make or break.
But that's non-refundable, right?
It's a deposit, so whatever gets used gets used.
So, for example, with Spark, all of their $11,000 was used. They went to the end. One of the first groups to propose us to bail, we do owe them a refund.
Okay, that makes sense.
Something like a retainer.
Yeah, exactly. Just like we charge real estate developers.
The options that are on the table, David, can you, I guess it looks like a full RFP or going out for new clients would take about a year to turn.
We could
shorten that by, let's say we can shorten it by 2 months. In terms of actual staff time, how impactful would that be on our other goals, such as affordable housing, getting our current cannabis dispensary permit approved, other issues like that?
We have, as you know, we have a staff of 3, and I could say that one full-time employee right now, it's really 2 halves, but Christina and Wendy have spent an enormous amount of time in 2020 on the business recovery and reopening, leaving myself to do some more of the policy things. Personally, I think I'd like to spend my time at your behalf dealing with the housing issues. There are over 200 housing bills coming our way this year. We still have yet to perfect the Spark project through its entitlements, building, and ensuring that the CCBP can be issued. We have also a lot of things to talk about with the development code, the inclusionary housing ordinance, fees as well for affordable housing. It's going to be a squeeze, to be honest with you.
And we also have general plan and the rest of it.
But how does it work if we hire a consultant in terms of what amount of work can we have the consultant do?
Well, certainly as we had HDL do a lot of the preliminary analysis, they have a certain amount of expertise that we don't have.
Yeah.
They also do background checks. So to that degree, we do need I do recommend that we get a consultant to assist in that area.
And could we just get a contract planner that was paid for out of their retainer to do the work?
We certainly could.
So we could do this without spending any of your time?
No, I would need to have oversight over that planner and working that process. Obviously, I have the experience of doing it the first time. hands-on. But as you know, Kathy and I worked on that together quite exclusively. With Mr. Walter, may I add. And it didn't take a lot of Jeff's time.
Let's say the previous year was 100%, and we're not 100% of your time, but we're calling it 100%. If we were to hire a contract planner, say, how much of your time could we get back for the city's work, and how much would still be spent on this project?
I'd be spending 30 to 50% of my time on this new process during the time of getting the RFP out. Now, the good news is we could use the prior RFP. There's not a whole lot to change. We have the point system, if you recall, to making sure there's certain thresholds that are made on the proposals. But I still need to invest a lot of my time.
So if we had a contract planner and we used a consultant, how many hours per week would you have to use supervising the contract planner and dealing with the consultant?
I'd guess about 10 hours a week.
1/4 of all of your time would be devoted to that?
Yeah, because I'm expecting a lot more applicants or proposals.
Why is that?
Well, I believe now the word is out that we're willing to entertain a second. I think there'll be much more interest. The first time around, if you recall, we were only looking at one of the 4 type of businesses. And I now believe that other people will be looking for non-storefront and also manufacturing and testing as well. So I think that whole world will open up.
But we don't need to do an RFP for non-storefront.
That's true. We don't have to. There was very little interest initially. I suspect that might change.
I wasn't anticipating doing an RFP for non-storefront since we had 0 applicants previously. I was thinking it was just an RFP for a second dispensary.
Two of them, Councilmember Harrington, did say that they wanted to do storefront, and then they bailed in that process as we went through the storefront. We got more finance.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't want to do me personally, I don't want to do an RFP for non-storefront because anybody who wanted to do that basically should have applied last time.
Correct.
So if you're only talking about 1 second dispensary with a contract planner and like a HDL consultant, then how many hours a week would it be?
Well, I'd say 5 to 10, again, only because I don't know the level of skill of that consultant that only deals with land use planning and cannabis. I don't know how many of those kind of
Well,
folks are.
let's assume it was HDL.
Yeah, then I'd say somewhere between 5 to 10 hours of my time a week. And we also have to factor in Jeff's as well.
For what period of time?
I'd say 6 months, 6 to 8 months. That's what we had the first time around. So somewhere in there, I'd like to think we could do it quicker.
I'm really struggling with understanding, and obviously I bill my time by 0.1, so I'm acutely aware of how long things take. Could you put up the chart again that shows the process?
There you go.
Okay.
So a lot
So-
of front end work. Amy,
So let's just say that we use the exact same RFP. So, and you're going to put it on the website. What is the work associated with taking the exact same RFP and putting it on the website?
3 or 4 hours tops.
Okay, so January through the end of February. So a month and a half would be 3 or 4 hours total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of my time, and then
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so then initial paper application ranking, who does that?
that one was conducted by HDL with my assistants.
Okay, so can we transfer
have-
more? So how much
We can
time does
transfer
that take?
Review.
Mhm.
I believe HDL spent better part of about 10 hours on that, about an hour a piece for the 10 proposals.
Okay, but how much of your time is that?
I spent probably about 2 hours on that.
Okay, so 2 hours for the entire month.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, I'm just getting down to it because 4 hours a week, if you gave me 4 hours a week, I will be, you know, doing some serious litigation. So it sounds like it is not 4 hours a week in general. I mean, we could go through each of these boxes, but it doesn't seem like that's an accurate estimate based on the process. to me. I mean, I could keep going.
It's a very dynamic process. I mean, some days you'll go through.
So like the interview and proposal
I'm
review
trying to
committee.
guess based.
Yeah. Mm,
That probably took about 5 hours of our time, at least 2 hours to go over all of the proposals
yeah.
with police chief, myself, and HDL.
Mhm.
Again, we're setting up Zoom meetings, we're reading reports, we're
Sure.
commenting on the reports. Yeah,
I think we have 3 hours, 2, 5, 10 hours total over a 3-month period. And then city council meeting, that's normal. Site search and application process. That's kind of on the person who gets
Yeah, there's
selected. Very
yeah.
little HDL and staff review,
Very
staff
little.
report. Mhm.
Yep,
And then the
5
final.
to
So
10 hours
I
a
don't know how that can add up to 5 hours a week. I mean, you can put it down now, but it just doesn't seem like it would take that much time.
We should come back to you with some paths and a work plan based on what you decide today, because we can do that between now and adoption, of course.
Mhm.
But it'd be nice if we were able to spend a little more time.
Yeah.
thinking that through.
Okay, it's fine. I just don't want to move forward because there's an allegation that it's going to take up 25% of our planning director's time, when looking at the process, it doesn't make any intellectual sense to me that would be true. So if the idea is we're not going to move forward with the second one because we're not going to do the general plan, I cannot accept that at face value as a representation. But anyway, I'm happy to get a thoughtful response to that question.
Yeah,
So-
no, I'm glad to get it cleared up. Go ahead, Kelso.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I agree with what Councilwoman Harrington was saying to the extent that our planning director's focus and priority, I believe at our last meeting, we declared 2021 the year of housing, and working on the general plan and the housing elements and all of that. And we have spent, in my view, I'm new here, but the city has spent a tremendous amount of time on this cannabis process over the last 2 years. And moving forward, I think it's time to focus on housing and cemetery and other issues. And that doesn't mean we can't do a second dispensary. I'm just saying sequentially, maybe we should focus on some other issues. Maybe we approve our second dispensary, we say it's coming, and perhaps through a consultant or other something else, we start moving that process forward. But while in the meantime, I would love David, Christina, and Wendy to focus on all of these housing issues that are so important when it comes to timing and SB, whatever it is, and 330. We just need, in my view, if there's a way we can do this, if we can do both of these without sacrificing the quality of either, that would be great. But if we have to choose, I would really prefer to focus on housing and other issues right now, while signaling or approving that we have a second dispensary. We just don't necessarily have to start the process right away.
I think that's the same as not doing it. It's approved, but we're not going to do it. You might as well not do it.
Unless you set it to a date certain to start the process. I think, I do think that a lot of the issues that we have before us right now are really important, and I do feel like we spent a lot of time on cannabis. We have a dispensary that's opening. There is access to cannabis. And to me, it's not sounding like a ton of time, but I wouldn't want to sacrifice, I don't want to sacrifice our work on housing at all. I think that that's critically important, and I think we need to move that forward as quickly and swiftly as possible. For example, we've gotten a dispensary approved, but we still haven't finalized housing impact fees. So I think there's a lot of things that continue to get put off, fires, COVID, whatever. And we have gone through and approved our first dispensary. Approving a second one, sure, I totally support it. Glad that we're doing it. But the process, I think we could wait a bit, finish a lot of the work that we're doing on the development code, and then start this process, start the RFP, 3 to 6 months from now, and open that process up then. So if there's a date certain that we can open it up, then we're saying we're going to do it here. That's the way that I feel about it. I think that if we can push it down just a little bit, we've approved the process, we've gotten through, legalized, and then we're having a second dispensary. and it's going to start a little bit down the road, I don't see the problem with that.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is Madeline. So possibly between, well, the two Daves, they might come up with something that would be amenable to Councilmember Harrington, you know, the numbers, rather than possibly trying to force them. But I understand what you know what? I understand exactly what she is saying. So maybe there's something between the two Davids that could come up with that number, something, that sweet spot, or something that will help us along.
I mean, I thought Councilwoman Harrington had a good point. I mean, if this can all be handled by a contract planner,
Yeah.
and all paid for, by the way, in my view, I don't want to spend any more money on this process, as long as it's all paid for through cost recovery. That was an interesting idea. I mean, it seemed to make a lot of logical sense to me, and that's, I guess, we're sort of on the hang up here, if it still takes 25% of our planning director's time. And so that's the.
But it doesn't appear that it does.
Yeah, I've been asked to come up with a number off the seat of my pants here, and I think it would be good to kind of come up with a better finite number on a more streamlined process. And if, by golly, we could find a consultant that knows the cannabis world, it would reduce my number significantly.
Councilmember Ding, Councilmember Agrimonti.
I'm the thinking, again, we spend too much time on this in a couple of years, and the argument and the studies, and finally, we have worked out a policy, and then it's time for us to carry that out in a technical way. No any more than an argument, no any than a back and the forth. And then in this way, and also we can build up our city council's reputation, because we seriously, set up in a policy. Right now, it's a time for us to carry that out.
Okay. I mean, I think we have carried out our policy with regards to a single dispensary. A second dispensary is additional policy. So I think those are, I'm not sure how your comment relates to the second dispensary and where your kind of direction is there.
Another thing is that as to the second dispensary store, I think the locations and also is important. And the West Napa Street, that location I visit over there, has been abandoned. That is a 765 abandoned for so many years. If the people visit there, it's, you want to feel very sad, nothing to do. And then I want to see even the landlord can join the applicant and help them to apply and for this kind of a permit. And it's easier for them because this is a big and a huge capital investment. Remodeling, everything is changing. And then I don't want to see when an applicant got approved and later when the landlord and want to do the second job to meet those kind of requirements. And the back and forth, and we spend a lot of the time and the money.
Okay. So it sounds like there's general support on council for a second dispensary for sure. The big concern that I'm hearing from council is that we not use a significant amount of our planning director's time on cannabis. We want to move forward on issues of housing and other issues that we have here. It sounds like there's a desire to look at the process of hiring a contract planner and understand better how that might better utilize our planning director's time. Am I hearing that correctly, or are there disagreements with the way I'm framing this?
No, I think you are actually phrasing it very well, but I have to just say from the onset, I don't want people to feel that I will support this. I think I played a big role in supporting the first dispensary, just moved it's on its way, but I'm one and done. And people who are for cannabis dispensaries, the people, some of them I heard tonight, I think they still have respect for me because I understand what they're sharing and how they feel. And I know that there is a need for this product, but I am not going to be supporting a second dispensary.
Okay.
I think your summary was good with where we're at. And I would just say, in all things political, things that are delayed often don't get accomplished. That's my concern. And so, you know, I think that staff coming back with a plan, using a contract planner and a consultant, which is charged to the applicants, would be good. And it's not the rush because of the things you said, it's the rush because somehow it could just get moved down. I'd rather just get it taken care of and completed and then close the book.
Okay. So go ahead, Kelso. Sorry. Or sorry, Councilmember Barnett.
I assume at some point council will have input with this potential contract planner to tweak the process. Is that correct? I mean, I assume we'll have another meeting about this at city council, or is that?
Well, we can bring it back at your adoption time, at least include that in the staff report as to what a potential implementation plan is.
Right. So the process isn't part of the ordinance. That's not policy.
That's correct.
something we can, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable to you, Dave Storer?
Yeah, sorry, my internet's been kind of going crazy. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Do you feel comfortable that if we get a contract planner and if we hire a consultant that we can save your time for the other priorities of council?
Absolutely, sir. Yeah.
You do? Okay, great.
It's going to depend on the.
It depends on, well, great. Well, let's hire somebody good who knows and has a lot of experience in this because.
And that contractor planner will be totally paid for through the fees, correct? No. Okay.
Okay. No, I guess I'm comfortable with that. And it sounds like we have a desire on council to open this up to try to allow other entrepreneurs to come forward and apply. And of course, if you've applied before, you'd be able to reapply and you may get it. Okay. Do we need a motion here or this is a direction to council kind of situation? Okay.
You need a motion to introduce the ordinance. That's all you need to do.
Great. Do I have a motion to introduce the ordinance? I'll move it. Go ahead. So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Agrimonti,
No.
Councilmember Barnett. Councilmember Barnett,
Aye.
Councilmember Ding,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
and Mayor Harvey.
Yeah.
Thank you. The motion passes 4-1.
Here we go.
Oh, can I make one quick comment before we move on?
Yes, you may.
When we come back and talk about the process, I think anybody that applied before and already had their application vetted should have a way to reaffirm that the facts are still true in their prior application and not have to pay to have it vetted a second time. So I think just as a tweak, that is something that's important because if you're turning in the exact same application twice, you shouldn't have to pay this, you know, the fee to have it vetted again.
That's fair.
May I just respond? And that's a great comment. I think that's very apropos. What I think we'll notice that some of the employees may have changed, and that's also a part of an application. So yeah, we can take that into consideration. That'd be great.
Excellent. Moving on. Thank you very much. Great job, council. Moving on to item 6.2, presentation and discussion of the status of Sonoma's implementation of the requirements under California's SB 1383, short-lived climate pollutants. And says none of this time receive a briefing, but I don't think I'm supposed to read that. I believe I'm turning this over to Travis Wagner, SB 1383. Get ready, because this is a big one.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Harvey and members of the City Council. So tonight I'm going to be talking about SB 1383, and that's the city's implementation of the state law SB 1383 on short-lived climate pollutants. So included in tonight's agenda packet are a very short staff report and a rather lengthy draft implementation plan, along with a timeline to implement the requirements in the city. So I'm going to be giving a brief presentation covering the basics of the implementation plan and not going into too much detail. But following the presentation, I will be answering any questions. And also tonight joining us is Ken Wells, representing the city's franchise hauler, Sonoma Garbage Company, and Leslie Lukash and Zinzi Tan from Zero Waste Sonoma to also answer questions as necessary should their expertise be required. So I'm going to share my screen. Wendy, we all set? Yes.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So SB 1383, just a little bit of background, is a climate action and a food security law. The climate action is based on the fact that landfilling organics generates methane, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. And the food security aspect is we're disposing of edible food while a number of people in the state and the county are facing food insecurity. They simply don't have enough food or sufficient nutrition on a daily basis. So SB 1383's goal is to reduce the disposal of organics, and that's 50% by 2020, which was, of course, last year, and 75% by 2025. I will note that the final regulations were not promulgated until December 2020. So based on all indicators, that goal was not met. The law was passed about, I think it was four years ago. So the state is behind. Just as a side note, if the state does meet that goal of the 75% reduction in organics, right now, statewide, there's a significant shortage in capacity to handle all the organics, which has some implications as well as cost and opportunities. So that's just something that may come up later on. Also, 20% of commercial edible food is to be recovered from trash by 2025. Unfortunately, the implementation report did have a typo. It said 2050, but the correct date is 2025. So those are the overall goals of the law. Briefly, what is organic waste? As my summary of that as defined in the final regulation is that it includes food, food waste, yard waste, which is grass clippings, flowers, branches, so forth, organic textiles and carpets made with natural fiber, paper products, lumber and wood that's obviously not treated, manure, and a few other things is collectively defined as organic waste. So according to the 2014 waste characterization study for Sonoma County, just to give you a perspective, and there's going to be one being conducted in the next, I believe, year or so or two. Organics in the waste itself, 30.7% of it was organics, 19.8% was compostable paper, and about 5.7% was wood and lumber. So we throw a lot of materials away that can be recovered, recycled, and composted, which is one of the issues that's driving this law. So just a snapshot of what's happening in Sonoma, looking at our municipal solid waste universe. Their Sonoma Garbage Company has almost 4,300 customers. Most of these are residential, slightly over 4,000, and then 184 commercial accounts. These also can be institutions, schools, and so forth and so on. And then multifamily apartment condo type complexes, there's 51. And this slide just shows all the waste that's produced. The y-axis on the left is in tons, and we're pretty much holding steady, although I will say that population has increased a little bit, and there's been a little bit of a dip in the waste, so that's actually a positive thing. And the point below just shows you how much of the organic portion is going to have to be reduced overall to meet the state goals. Now, the thing about SB 1383 is the city does not follow the goals. Instead, those are the statewide goals. But what the state has done is enacted a series or adopted a series of regulations from the law that establishes all these specific requirements on numerous entities, including the city, haulers, and so forth. And so the major categories are separation and collection of organics. There's compliance and enforcement. There's education and outreach. There's also procurement and utilization of recovered organics and recycled paper products, and also the recovery of edible food. So all these are the requirements to achieve those goals of reduction in landfilling of organic waste and also the recovery of edible food. And there's requirements for jurisdiction. So in this case, this would be the city. Also the Joint Powers Authority. In our case for Sonoma County, it's Zero Waste Sonoma. It also has requirements for all generators, and that includes residential and commercial. Haulers, we also have self-haulers. Those are individuals that bring their materials to the landfill or compost facility themselves. Commercial food generators and food recovery organizations. So these are the basic categories where all the regulated entities. I'm going to focus primarily tonight on the city's requirements and how we're moving forward. So again, the city has prescribed requirements, but not outcomes, targets, and goals. What's interesting, I guess, and a little scary, is that the city can be fined for non-compliance, which is a new approach to force cities to actually implement the program, adopt the program, so forth and so on. So this is certainly concerning, and that's helping driving this whole issue to make sure that we achieve these goals. The city must monitor compliance and enforce requirements for all generators. So as I'll talk about, this is going to require an enforcement component for the city specifically for this. Now, on January 1st, 2022, this is where the program has to be implemented. And that on that date is when state enforcement begins. So by January 1st, 2022, and I'm going to talk about the rest of the presentation, I'm going to talk about each one of these 6 requirements. By January 1st, 2022, the city must enact the required ordinances, provide, monitor, and enforce organics collection for all generators, conduct annual education and outreach, adopt environmental preferable purchasing policy, begin the procurement of recovered organics, and establish and support an edible food recovery program. In January 1st, 2024, the city enforcement must begin. There are steps before that, the education. So the goal here is, educate, outreach, but the actual enforcement and citations by the city are to begin no later than January 1st, 2024. So, and again, this is just a summary of what's in the implementation plan, but number 1 is enacting the following ordinances. Again, this has to be done by January 2022. And I will say in the implementation plan is a timeline to achieve all these. So this helps give a sense of what's going to be needed. So the ordinance, we have to have an ordinance that implements SB 1383 requirements, and it has to include a city enforcement component. The city also has to adopt an ordinance that regulates self-hauling, and this would be a self-hauling generator ordinance for non-residents, but for commercial. And certainly these don't have to be separate ordinances. They all can be in one ordinance, whatever the city council decides. The second part is to provide, monitor, and enforce organics collection for all generators. So the city has a franchise agreement with Sonoma Garbage Sonoma Garbage Company. And customers are required to have 3 color coded containers. So they have to be specific colors, or the lids have to. So no longer are residents allowed to opt in to a program, which means they could just have trash and decide not to do recycling or organics. That's no longer allowed in the law. And so the containers have to, or the lids have to be green for organics, blue for recycling, and gray for trash. So this goes to having some universal color scheme throughout the state to promote less thinking and just more acting on segregation at generation point. So currently, residents in the city of Sonoma are prohibited from placing non-plant-based food waste into organics cart, which is a function of how the food waste is managed. So they can't put it in meat, fish, dairy, so forth and so on. But this has to change. So all food waste must be placed into organics container at some point, but it has to be implemented by January 1st, 2022. And this is going to require major education and outreach because people have been habitualized doing a specific action, and we're going to have to correct that. Well, this will mean that all organics will have to be hauled to Napa. Some organics were diverted and handled correctly, but this means that all organics will have to be hauled to Napa. And a rough cost increase for this is going to be about 6% above the current fee, just to do this hauling all time, so we can capture all food waste from residents. Now, commercial generators, they also have to provide containers for collection of organics and recycling in the front of house for customers. That means customers that go into, for example, a restaurant, there has to be these additional containers. There might have been trash before, but we have to have organics and recycling as well. And containers must also be properly color coded with those 3 colors, as well as their specific labeling requirements as well. And periodically inspect containers for contamination if found, educate employees. So this isn't a city requirement, but the city's going to have to adopt this and do compliance monitoring and enforcement for that. So Sonoma Garbage Company must monitor waste containers for organics and conduct annual route reviews. So the purpose of this is to identify where contamination occurs, and contamination is defined as putting organics into trash or into recycling or vice versa. It's to make sure that the proper material is put into the proper container, and also to help identify anyone that is not participating. So what would happen upon finding this is the city would then have to cite and find those based on the date. So this is where the compliance aspect is coming in. So again, commercial generators have to participate and properly segregate the material. With residential generators, if there's contamination, it's really up to the city's discretion if they want to levy fines or however they want to correct that, whether it's through just education, notification, or whatever, but that is the system. And I will point out on the right hand, the picture there is Sonoma Garbage Company has this approach where they can constantly visually inspect the containers because it's being dumped in front of them. So that's a very helpful way, and it significantly reduces labor costs and obviously protects safety around containers. The city also has to conduct education and outreach, whether that's through staff or some other arrangement. But there has to be an annual education element of all of relevant SB 1383 requirements, specifically for organic waste generators, which is residents, that includes single family units, multifamily units, businesses, and institutions, but also commercial edible food generators, which I'll get to in a second, which is has the potential of being a rather significant program. And also annually self-haulers also have to be educated. So that's a minimum requirement. So there's ways that could be done periodically or whatever that would address that. The city has to adopt an environmentally preferable purchasing policy. What the law says is that 75% of purchased paper products must have a minimum 30% recycled content. The city does have a green purchasing policy, but it's pretty outdated. And so this is going to have to be updated. Paper products also must be recyclable under the U.S. Federal Trade Commission's recyclability guidelines. And again, we have a green purchase policy in SMC 304060, which will need to be updated. And with some of these things, especially like the purchasing policy, the state and Zero Waste Sonoma are working on model ordinances to help. So we're not starting from scratch. They can be adjusted. So there's a lot of great tools and resources out there, which significantly reduces staff time and just makes it also consistent throughout the county in this case. The city's going to have to procure recovered organics. So this is kind of closing the loop. Well, we're increasing the amount of material being composted. To close that loop, we also, municipalities will now have to purchase what comes out of that. So the actual figure is really kind of, we have some current guidance, and it says that right now the city's going to have to procure about 800 tons per year, which is the equivalent of 1,150 yards of compost or mulch. RNG is renewable natural gas, which is produced primarily through anaerobic digestion of materials, but there's none in this particular area. This procured compost or mulch, and again, this is an annual requirement, can be used for erosion control, soil amendment, parks, open space, or the city could procure it and just give it away to residents. It doesn't matter. The city has to maintain records and report annually. So to give you perspective, in 2018, 2019, the city parks purchased 32 yards, and 2019, 2020 purchased 7 yards. So we're looking at a substantial increase, and a rough cost on current value is about 25,000 K per year. That price could go up if, depending on the supply and demand. I will note that we just received guidance just a few days ago from Zero Waste Sonoma that there might be a different formula that may actually reduce this amount. So this is something that we're looking at, but that's something you'd expect with relatively new regulations is, guidance, interpretation, so forth and so on.
I have a question there, Travis. Is it just organics, or are we able to purchase things like recycled fuel, recycled electricity, things like that are also included in that?
Right now, it's my understanding. So you can purchase, digestate and the fuel and the organics, but it's not the other items, not the energy itself.
Yeah, but you can buy fuel too. It doesn't have to just be. So it's organic. It doesn't have to be like just compost, right?
Well, compost and mulch, but I don't know specifically about the renewable electricity. I don't know. When we have Zero Waste Sonoma come on, maybe they can answer that.
Then I had an earlier question when you said that we can choose to set fines on residential.
Yeah.
Would an apartment complex, would they automatically be subject to fines, or do they count as residential, or are they covered under commercial?
If they have, I think if they're defined as a multi-unit, so it would be a commercial account where they supply that, then the individual providing that would be subject to the fines. But if it's like 3 units, then that would be a residential individual units.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Number 6, establish an edible food recovery program. And this goes back to trying to capture edible food that's being thrown away. So commercial edible food generators must have access to food recovery services. So we're going to have to figure out how to match up generators with those organizations that collect and distribute the food. This is going to require annual education and outreach. The city's going to have to monitor compliance, and the city's going to have to conduct a capacity assessment to find out if something has to be created or expanded to make sure that the supply meets the demand. There's 2 types of commercial food recovery generators. We have what's called Tier 1. They have to comply starting January 1st, 2022, and that's supermarkets, grocery stores, and a couple of other entities. And Tier 2 generators is later. That's restaurants, rather large restaurants, large hotels. Our hospital is not covered because of the number of beds. The one thing that is kind of popping out at myself and some of my colleagues is the schools with on-site food facilities. They will be subject. And at this point, there's no information about de minimis level on that other than, like seats and rooms with the other entities. And basically, what's going to happen is they're going to have to establish a food recovery program. And again, the city's going to have to help implement this and monitor this, and so forth and so on for the different tier generators. So this is one of those that has the potential of requiring a lot of focus and attention. We just don't know at this point because we're still trying to figure out who all the tier 1 generators are and the extent of the whole food recovery program. So I did give a couple, very little on the city's costs. The issue right now is a lot of these costs are unknown, but they have the potential of being significant. It's going to require annual administration and labor costs to run this program, whether that's done with staff or a consultant or contractor, whatever. And certainly, I will say that a substantial amount of my time is being used just to do the implementation. This is going to be a major focus of my time for this year, but there will be annual administration and labor costs for sure. There's going to be some of the larger costs are going to be the haulers costs, and those are paid by generators through the fees, trash fees, and not by the city. The other city costs include annual reporting and record keeping, compliance monitoring, basically doing inspections in partnership with our hauler. Enforcement is probably one of the bigger costs. Just don't know what that is going to cost in what level and hours and procedure, what that's going to be. Education and outreach, I think we have a pretty good program, and I think that's spelled out pretty well. So that doesn't have to be significant, but if it's a problem with contamination, the city's going to have to really put more effort into education and outreach because you have to achieve compliance so that the state doesn't fine the city. And as I mentioned, the procurement of organics, I gave a ballpark figure, but this is really an unknown because the whole market is in flux with supply and demand. Already hearing information about fees, tipping fees are going up, and they're likely to go way up because they can. The procurement of recycled paper, I don't suspect this to be a significant price increase, but we have to look into that. And one of the big unknowns is the food recovery program, the implementation and oversight of that. At this point, which is too early, we'll have more information as we go along, but we just don't know at this point.
Crazy.
A couple outstanding issues are we have incomplete data. So the whole procurement quantity of the recovered organics, we don't know. We have that ballpark figure of the 800 tons, but this could change. If anything, it'll drop. So that would be positive. We do not have all the names of tier 1 and tier 2 commercial food generators. We should be getting that list in the next couple weeks. Part of the problem is they're with the county, they're listed as having an address in Sonoma, but probably half of them have a Sonoma address, but they are in the unincorporated part of the county, like in the Springs. So we have to differentiate who's actually within the city. And again, the existence and capacity of the current commercial food recovery program. And something else, we just don't know the full compliance status with commercial generators with SB 1383. We get a sense that it's pretty strong, but we need to verify that. And with COVID, this has certainly caused some problems with businesses that are unfortunately no longer with us. And this is just something we're gonna have to go out and look at and check to make sure they're part of that. So we don't know how much that's gonna cost to do that actual thing. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I will stop sharing my screen if that's okay. And then we have other individuals to help answer questions. Does anyone need to go back on the presentation, or can I go ahead and just hit stop share?
Yeah, I've got a question to start. So when we talk about fines, how are those calculated and what are those fines for the city based on?
The fines, when you say the fines from the state to the city?
Yeah.
There's actually a formula and there's actually a detailed sort of strategy about the fines don't kick in until a certain number of days and when you conclude a notice of violation. So the focus is to encourage the city to get into compliance through numerous tools, and the fines are down the road. I've seen the chart for that, but they don't kick in immediately.
Yeah, but they can be pretty high, can't they? It could potentially be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I thought I saw up to $10,000 per day.
Can we bring Zinzi in here? I see her raising her hand.
And Leslie's with us as well.
Oh, Leslie's here? Okay.
Yeah.
So Leslie or Zinzi have an answer on the fines.
Yeah, I think Zinzi, actually, if you can answer that fines question.
Yes. So let's see here. I am just looking at our regulations right now. And so, Logan, your question was about penalties that the state would impose on the city for non-compliance.
Yeah.
So it says a minor violation would be no less than $500 and no more than $4,000. A moderate is between $4,000 and $7,500. A major violation is between $7,500 and $10,000.
I think that might be the fine structure that we charge to haulers. You're sure that that's what the state?
No. So that's what the state would impose on the city for non-compliance. I can list out what the penalty amounts would be for the city to impose on the businesses, if you'd like.
No, that's fine. Perfect.
Just to clarify, is that per day or per violation?
Let's see here. That is per day.
Yeah.
Per violation per day. So it is significant.
Yeah, it can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I have a question. Are we going to get a proposal from staff about augmenting the budget or creating maybe it requires, Travis, you're part-time, maybe it requires a full-time, FTE in that role. Are we going to get those kind of suggestions from staff about how we might meet these obligations? Or, I mean, I thought this was very informative and I knew nothing about the topic whatsoever. And I appreciated your report, and the portion about the fines is eye-opening, I guess is the right word.
Well, that's going to have to happen. Two things. One is the hauler will be presenting any fee increase, which will be their part coming up fairly soon. And Ken Wells is on there if he wants to talk about that. And then at some point when we have a stronger sense of what it's going to take, we're going to need to, because obviously there will have to be a budget request. And this is, I'll say that things are moving pretty fast, and we should get more information, or I should say more confidence within pretty soon, next 4 to 6 weeks, I think, to make a more informed, at least the beginning of an informed statement as to what it's going to cost.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we didn't even have your position 2 years ago, and now if this came up, who would even be doing this work? It's kind of amazing.
Well, that's a good question. Someone's going to have to, whether it's staff or a outside consultant or contractor. Sure. Yeah.
Councilmember Barnett.
Yeah. So what I want to echo what Mayor Harvey and Councilwoman Harrington just said. I appreciate this presentation. It's very eye-opening, and education is going to be very important on this, because I don't think anyone really in Sonoma or the state, very few people know this is coming. Number one. Number two, just to clarify, let me get this straight. The state is requiring us to perhaps expend significant expenses to enforce and create this new program. Has there been any discussion at the state level about providing assistance to cities? Or they're just
It is an unfunded mandate.
saying you're going to have to invest money? Okay.
But Leslie, do you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
there's a couple things I want to add here. One is that the agency and the jurisdictions are currently going through a memorandum of understanding, because there's actually quite a bit of things that the agency can do on behalf of the jurisdictions. So some of the things that were listed in Travis's presentation that are the responsibilities of the city. Those are some of those things are things that that's why you have an agency, to help the jurisdiction stay in compliance. So some of the things on his list will actually be taking over and implementing on behalf of the jurisdiction. And then regarding the fines component from CalRecycle from the state, as long as you're moving forward and as a jurisdiction and not ignoring the regulations, CalRecycle is coming at this from a collaborative standpoint. They really don't want to find jurisdictions. They're going through the education outreach. So I don't think any of our jurisdictions in Sonoma County are, certainly not right now, they're not at risk, because we are moving forward with the compliance measures, and I'm very confident we'll hit the targets by the January 1st, 2022 date and the January 2024 date. So we have heard loud and clear from CalRecycle that they really are just looking for the violators of the cities who just are doing nothing, and with continued probing and trying to move them along, they're just ignoring this regulation. So we're not in that group at all.
And if I may add to Leslie's comments, actually, here, the jurisdictions in Sonoma County and as a whole, we are very much on top of this regulation. We, for example, the city of Sonoma already has an organics collection program. Travis is completely on top of 1383. He knows this regulation very well. And of course, you have us as the agency helping with education and outreach. And of course, we're developing this memorandum of understanding that Leslie mentioned. So we're in a very good spot. And CalRecycle has acknowledged that Sonoma County is a leader in implementing these regulations. So I just don't worry about the fines. Like Leslie said, I think we're in a good spot. So I don't think we're, as long as we move forward with implementation, I don't think you should be worrying about that.
I just want to add to that, and that's why, taking a look at the timeline is going to take a number of steps by staff, but also city council, just to make sure we meet that deadline. And, I think we're in pretty good shape, but only if we stick pretty well to that timeline.
I have a question, whether it's Ken or Travis can answer it. We need to get to 100% of commercial generators and 100% of residential generators. Where are we along that path right now?
I'll take that one. At this point, we're in 100% compliance with SB 1383. I cannot get all the numbers. There's 3 different laws that commercial are required to satisfy, and we're in compliance with all of them at this point in time in city of Sonoma.
So every restaurant that's here has a organics program right now?
Yes, or a written exemption that says that they're taking care of it some other way.
And every single residence has an organics bin right now?
Not every resident, but we're in the process of distributing them right now.
Okay, and every apartment building has a organics can right now?
They either are compliant with the program by an organics container, or they've a written exemption explaining that their landscaper or somebody else takes care of their organics. Yes.
That's AB 1826 though.
I say it again.
Isn't that wouldn't be compliant? You can't do it for landscaping waste for 1383. That's only compliance with AB 1826.
I'm correct.
So with 1383, we don't have compliance for, do we have compliance for restaurants with 1383 or with AB 1826?
I'm not sure I can answer your question. 1383 is still not here yet. We are in compliance with everything that's required for 1383 at this point in time. We're in compliance with all the other laws at this point in time.
If I may jump in, so
help me, Jesse.
Ken is right in that right now Sonoma is in a really good spot. There are previous laws that are kind of like stepping stones to 1383, and AB 1826 is the mandatory composting law that just requires commercial businesses to compost. And in that respect, Sonoma is 100% compliant, which is better than any other jurisdiction in Sonoma County, I may add. But for 1383, yes, Logan, you're right that the exemptions that were given out for 1826 do not necessarily apply for some of the businesses because 1383 is more stringent than AB 1826. So, you know, in a year when, well, I guess less than a year, January 1st, 2022, when SB 1383 becomes effective, then there are some businesses that are technically non-compliant. That Sonoma Garbage is going to be working on signing them up or providing them a cart this year.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm surprised if we're compliant because I've done some just looking behind some of the restaurants on the plaza, and I haven't seen evidence of organic streams there, but maybe I'm just misreading it because I'm seeing mostly black garbage bags and recycling streams. So, okay.
But I'm sorry, Cindy, what do the containers look like for organics? What?
Oh, it's just the green containers that Sonoma Garbage right now is only vegetative waste that customers can put in there. But Sonoma Garbage and Travis has already been working on, as Travis mentioned in his presentation, moving all the organic material, shipping it to Napa instead of doing the chipping and grinding because with 1383, you know, meat and bones and cheese must all be composted along with your yard debris and food scraps, or I'm sorry, your vegetable food scraps. So that's something that's also going to be, should be taken care of by this fall. I've been in communication regularly with Travis and Ken. So yeah, Sonoma should be in good shape when January comes around.
Madeline, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Still on mute.
So organics and meat are different, is that right?
No, actually. So I'm sorry. Organics or organic materials is kind of an umbrella term. That is essentially like anything that has carbon in it, right? So that includes yard debris, food scraps. But currently, right now in Sonoma, you don't accept meat and bones and dairy in your green cart because right now it's just getting chipped and ground.
Right.
But when it is diverted to go to Napa to be actually composted, then meat and bones and dairy will be accepted.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Something happened to my iPad, so sorry.
I have a question. As to enforcement today for California State, that is the January the 1st, 2022. And the state, that is the January the 1st, 2024. I was wondering, it should be this, what kind of time frame? Why in 2 years? Why in the state put in early? For my understanding, usually it's easier for the city to carry that out. So why, yeah, can you explain the time frame?
Sure, I can go ahead and take that. So with the first deadline that Travis mentioned, January 1st, 2022, there are certain things that the city has to do by that date. So for example, provide a green cart to all residents and all businesses in Sonoma. That has to be done by January 1st, 2022. And if that is not done, then technically the state can fine the city for non-compliance. And so that's kind of the reason. But then with the later date, 2024, that's when the city can actually fine a business for maybe not composting, or they're not using their bin, right? Or contaminating it with garbage. And the reason for that 2-year delay is because the city has to, the state just wants to give the city additional time to pass an ordinance that will allow you to penalize generators, and also 2 more years to educate your businesses and residents about this law. And actually on this topic, I just wanted to add on Travis's presentation on the list of ordinances that the city needs to pass. Not all can be in one ordinance. And actually the state has provided a model ordinance called the enforcement ordinance for short. And it includes, regulation of self-haulers. It includes this collection requirement and the penalties. Everything will be in this big ordinance. And we at Zero Waste Sonoma are working on customizing the state's model specifically to Sonoma County. So we're hoping to bring that to you later in this year, because you do have to have that ordinance passed by January 1st of 2022.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does the city have any discretion over the penalties we will be charging businesses and residents?
Yes. So the regulations do specify a base penalty for, I think it's first violation, second violation, third and subsequent violation, but you can increase the violation, or I'm sorry, the penalty amounts if you wanted to. So there is a base that you have to.
There's a base.
Charge. Yeah,
So we
the
can
minimum.
below the base. Okay.
All right. Other questions? We'll go ahead and take it out for public comment.
Not seeing any public comment.
Not seeing anybody rise. We'll bring it back to council for comments. Anybody would like to comment? Okay, I'll go ahead. Really appreciate the presentation, Travis, and I appreciate Zinzi and Zero Waste Sonoma, Leslie as well, for being here to make a presentation to us. And thank you, Ken Wells, representing Sonoma Garbage, for being here. SB 1383 is a really large law. It's a big change in the way that we do business and the way that we handle garbage, but it's important in a number of ways. This is how we're going to help the state of California meet our climate emissions goals. When composting gets into landfill, it biodegrades in an anaerobic way. And so we produce methane rather than CO2. Being turned into compost, it becomes a carbon sink and actually draws CO2 out of the atmosphere, completes that carbon cycle, and can be very positive. And another way it really helps us is with landfill. We have a landfill that has about 22, 23 years of life left in Sonoma County. When we get to the end of that life, we either have to find a place for a new landfill, good luck, or start hauling that material out of the county of Sonoma. And so reducing the amount of waste that we're putting in the landfill that really does not need to be there, because everything that's compostable is technically recyclable, right? Is a great thing for us all to do as a community. This is going to be a huge lift for the city and for our garbage company, because the public outreach required to get people to understand composting is a lot. We're used to recycling now, and already contamination is a major issue when it comes to recycling. And so to get people to understand composting is going to be another additional lift. Right now, I don't know if there's going to be a paper on this or anything like that, but you can get a compost bin from Sonoma County Garbage. I have one, put all my vegetables and paper products and things like that in there, and it works out great. And it's something you can start at home, and people are able to save a bit on their garbage bill often, because usually you pay less for compost than you do for garbage. So this can be a net benefit for a lot of businesses and a lot of residents as well. So just encourage everybody to look into it. And this is going to be something we'll be talking about over this year because this is a huge change in the way that we do business. But it's an important change, one that's valuable, and one that will hopefully provide, or will definitely provide, lower carbon emissions for our state and reduce some of the pressure that's on the landfill. So again, I want to thank everybody for showing up today to talk about this. Travis, really appreciate the presentation and your expertise. And of course, Leslie Lukash and Zinzi Tan. Also want to thank Vice Mayor Madeline Agrimonti for all her work on Zero Waste Sonoma as our representative. You do a fantastic job over there, so appreciate that as well. If there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any vote on this, so we're just receiving it and we're moving forward. Thank you so much, everybody.
Can we take a 3-minute break?
Yes, let's go ahead and take a 3-minute break. I apologize. I forgot that you Usable food, serviceware, and other products containing polystyrene foam. And I'm not going to try that. PFAS. Go for David Kiff and Travis Wagner.
All yours, Travis.
Okay, thank you. Hello again, Mayor Harvey and members of the City Council. So attached in the agenda packet is the staff report and the proposed disposable food serviceware ordinance. So at this point, I'd like to provide some key aspects of the staff report and ordinance, a little bit of briefly on the background, and then talk about a summary of the ordinance itself. So the proposed ordinance is that you see tonight is a slightly modified version of the model ordinance that was presented to the City Council back in January 2020 by Zero Waste Sonoma. City Council asked the Community Services Environment Commission, the CSEC, to review it, and they did. They reviewed it and unanimously recommended that the City Council adopt the ordinance back in February 2020. In January and March of 2020, Zero Waste Sonoma, city staff, and the Chamber of Commerce reached out to 164 potentially affected businesses to introduce and explain the draft ordinance, answer questions, and receive feedback. Then COVID hit. During the ensuing period, the issue of PFAS came up, which is per or polyfluoroalkyl substances, so-called forever chemicals. They have numerous uses, but the issue of concern here is that they are used as lining in some paper-to-go products. So PFAS have become ubiquitous environmental pollutants and have become a serious cause of concern nationally. And you're going to see them in the news quite a bit over the next year or two, especially with regards to drinking water and wastewater. In response, Zero Waste Sonoma revised its model ordinance to include PFAS, and this was approved by their board, I believe, just back in January 2021, to also include in their model ordinance to prohibit the sale and distribution of disposable food packaging, also containing PFAS. And this component has, because of the time, has been included in tonight's draft ordinance. So I just want to give a summary of the ordinance. So in general, disposable food serviceware includes single-use bowls, plates, trays, those clamshell containers, cartons, cups, lids, stirrers, utensils, and napkins. That's just disposable food serviceware in general. But the ordinance itself would prohibit the distribution or sale of food or beverages containing food serviceware that contains disposable polystyrene polystyrene foam or PFAS itself. So it's not all those disposable food serviceware, but the specific ones that contain styrofoam, polystyrene foam, as well as PFAS. I will note that the ordinance as written specifically excludes meat and fish packaged in disposable polystyrene foam, and also food prepackaged outside of the city limits. The ordinance would also require that disposable food serviceware be recycled or composted, meaning that it's accepted or recycled, accepted for recycling or composted by the city's franchised hauler, Sonoma Garbage. The ordinance would also prohibit the retail sales of food service products composed of polystyrene foam, including cups, plates, and bowls. It would also prohibit the retail sale of polystyrene coolers that were not encased in other non-polystyrene products, pool or beach tools like noodles, and packaging materials for shipping. It also would require food establishments to provide single-use straws, utensils, lids, and condiment packets only upon request. So I will note that there are exemptions available in the ordinance for hardship cases, for public health emergencies, and global disruptions to recycling and composting markets, which have raised havoc over the past approximately 4 years on recycling, especially on recycling. During the preliminary discussion of the ordinance at the March 15th City Council meeting, one concern expressed was the consistency of this ordinance, especially in Sonoma Valley, considering that's under a different jurisdiction, because it's the unincorporated part of the county. So as noted in the staff report, 5 other jurisdictions have passed a version of the zero waste Sonoma model ordinance, very similar to the one that you see tonight. The model ordinance is scheduled to be introduced to the County Board of Supervisors on June 8th, which would include, of course, the Springs and other unincorporated areas surrounding the city. The other major concern expressed at the March 15th City Council meeting was the effective date. Originally in the model ordinance, it was 30 days after enactment. Staff is recommending that the date be 180 days from the adoption date. Another option that the City Council can consider is to adopt January 1st as 2022 is the effective date of the ordinance. And that's when the enforcement phase by Zero Waste Sonoma will begin. And part of that is the city may delegate enforcement of the ordinance to Zero Waste Sonoma under separate agreement, an MOU, which staff recommends. This concludes the staff report, and I would be glad to answer any questions. And I believe Leslie and Zinzi are also there, can talk about the model ordinance and other happenings as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, did we do any outreach to, or can we do outreach to like people that ship wine or other people that might be using this kind of materials as a regular part of their business to talk about timelines or get any feedback?
We did do that last year. We took a list of, through business licenses, of every potential entity that would be affected, including wine. Wine, whatever, stores or whatever in the city limits. Zero Waste Sonoma sent them a letter, and we worked with Mark Bodenhammer, and we set up an informational meeting, which was attended by staff in Zero Waste Sonoma, where we met and discussed it with them as well. So we have done that outreach thus far.
Oh, and then what kind of feedback did you get back?
Not much. The only feedback I think was, if I recollect, was sort of, what are these products that are going to be for for substitutes? And actually, there's a a restaurant supplier in the city that was there to help answer the questions and look at various product substitutions, because that was their biggest concern. Is there was general agreements like, yeah, we're okay with that, but what are we supposed to use that's going to be recycled and composted?
Okay, so your general feeling is people got notice about this.
Yes, and I also, prior to this introduction to the City Council, I did reach out to the Chamber of Commerce just to let them know, and did receive confirmation that they understood that or received that. Yep.
Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on the outreach to the wineries and also the shipping companies that specialize in shipping wine. As an industry, they actually are already moving away from polystyrene. So they're using more of the molded fiber to ship wine. So this is not new to them. And just as an industry, it's moving this direction already.
Go to Councilmember Barnett.
Yes, can you talk a little more about the concept of banning pool noodles? I have to admit, when we first discussed this on March 15th, I didn't really focus on that aspect. And when this article was in the paper, residents that sort of participated via social media and even our editor of our paper seemed to focus on the fact that we were banning pool noodles, with the idea that obviously with disposable products, you're continually using them, but with a pool noodle, you might have one for, 10, 20 years. And so why include that?
Well, so one of the problems is these are not recyclable. They actually break down over time and become smaller and smaller. So they become what we call micro and nanoplastics that ultimately enter the environment. And so that's derived from the model ordinance. If they're encased in something that is not polystyrofoam, then that's perfectly acceptable.
So the ordinance doesn't allow us to sell pool noodles within Sonoma, but a resident would be more than able to order one off Amazon. Is that still?
Yeah, I mean, the way the ordinance works, they could, go to Napa County and.
So if someone still wants a pool noodle, they will be able to.
It does not prohibit individual use of them. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Other questions? All right. Well, I'll give you guys a little time to noodle on that, and we'll go ahead and bring in some public comment. I see Matt Metzler with his hand up.
Can you hear me?
We can, Matt.
Okay, great. Thank you. Matt Metzler, 1110 Friar Creek Drive. And I wanted to thank you, say thank you to the council for considering this proposal. Thanks also to the city staff and especially to Sustainability Coordinator Wagner for supporting this move, especially for including the PFAS or forever chemicals in the ban. And I'd like to take my 3 minutes to provide some information to those who might not be aware of exactly how harmful styrofoam is. Polystyrene is slow to degrade, and if disposed of improperly, the foam can leach chemicals into the environment, harming water sources. Polystyrene manufacturing is an enormous creator of hazardous waste. Furthermore, polystyrene manufacture greatly contributes to global warming. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has already established styrene as a possible human carcinogen in 2002. So does a 2014 National Toxicological Program report on carcinogens, which classifies styrene as, quote, reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen, end quote, and being linked to occurrence of leukemia and lymphoma cancer. Air pollution due to proximity to industries that make styrofoam are another channel to get exposed to styrene, according to the NIH report. Many of the chemicals used in the manufacturing process are toxic, and workers who make them are at greatest risk. Benzene is another key ingredient in making styrofoam. Benzene is considered carcinogenic and is a foremost an occupational hazard, even causing leukemia in severe cases, according to the EPA. And benzene is a volatile organic compound classified as a key pollutant by the EPA. So styrofoam appears to last forever and is resistant to photolysis, or the breaking down of materials in sunlight. So the Society of Environmental Journalists states that styrofoam requires about 500 years to decompose. Styrofoam easily breaks to small bits, as Travis said, and small land and aquatic animals eating these pieces died due to toxins and blockage in their stomachs, leading to starvation, according to the Los Angeles Times. Styrofoam manufacturers also use hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, which negatively impact the ozone layer and climate change. So lastly, styrofoam is made from petroleum, which is a non-sustainable resource, the production of which creates heavy pollution and accelerates climate change. So I hope you consider future generations and the future of our beautiful planet in enacting this ordinance. Thank you again.
Thank you, Matt Metzler. Next, we have Josette Broge-Eichert.
Hi, it's me, Josette, again. Because of our year of COVID, I can say how much more plastic and other crap has been building up over here. Hopefully we can get back on track as things slowly get back to normal. I'm thrilled that the city of Sonoma is taking on eliminating styrofoam and chemical coated paper and cardboard. The main issue is takeout and leftover food. Almost every type of food can go in uncoated cardboard boxes like the ones Whole Foods uses. There are some liquids and sauces that have been brought up as an issue. I sent Kelso a link to products out there that can hold these things without the chemical coating. So they are out there and they're in use today. And as far as wine shipping, as I said in my email, we have been getting wine shipments in boxes with the cardboard inserts instead of styrofoam. So they're really being widely used. I wish I had one I could show you. They're much better than styrofoam. these are truly sturdy, and I can assure you that no wine bottles will be broken. If Sonoma wants to be truly sustainable, it is the time to do this. That it will cost businesses more should not be a factor. Even the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Bureau should get behind it. In fact, it is something they can promote to the tourists. Pride in the environmental consciousness of Sonoma. And for a timeline, styrofoam can go right now. And 6 months is ample time for the businesses to adjust. Please don't wait for other municipal counties or the county to act. Be a leader and quickly join the other cities that have moved forward. Because if you lead, others will follow. And this is an ad lib or an aside. Maybe you guys should think about that horrible floral foam. And I'm not just saying this because my competitors use it and get business from me, but it is every bit as carcinogenic as styrofoam. And nobody should be dumping that stuff or handling that stuff. It is full of formaldehyde and carcinogenic chemicals. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Josette. And we've got David Eicher.
I'm sorry, could you hear me now, or? You can hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, I kept having to click unmute. Anyway, I urge you to pass the ordinance so that it comes in effect sooner rather than later. We need to get the ball rolling on this. And do have one question on it. Oh, well, actually, before I get to that, and I know you're concerned about being in sync with the county for the springs. And I was thinking, what businesses both in the city limits and the springs, and the only one I could think about is Mary's Pizza Shack, but they're also in Santa Rosa. So if, and I think in other cities in the county, so you should be the same as with the other cities, and especially Santa Rosa, and hopefully the county will be the same as well. And I don't think you should need to worry about that. And the one question has to do with, I've seen packaging of fruits and vegetables which are not prepared, like whole tomatoes and peaches, packed with styrofoam. And so I'm just wondering why the polystyrene ban is only prepared foods and not unprepared foods. You know, I haven't seen it if anybody in the city of Sonoma currently does that, but I have seen it elsewhere. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, David. We'll bring it back to council for discussion. Do you have comments from council?
I support this. I'm prepared to vote for it.
Great. Yeah, same here. Jack?
Yeah, same.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved. Do you want me to read the ordinance?
No.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
So
Council, go ahead.
the only question table is, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The only question on the table is whether this goes into effect on October 1st or January 1st, and it appears there's support for October 1st. Is that when you say so moved, it's the ordinance says 180 days. Is there any interest in just doing it to comply when the county starts enforcing on January 1st?
I think October 1st seems to be ample time.
Especially since there was notice given and discussions held a year ago.
Okay.
All right, roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Agrimonti,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnett,
Aye.
Councilmember Ding,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
and Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Great. Moving on to item, whoa, my iPad moved. Moving on to item 7.1, discussion and consideration discussion action to make changes to the City County Commission appointment policy. City Manager.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, this item comes to you from me and Rebecca. And we wanted to make, first, let me say that we're asking for direction tonight, and we would bring back a completed policy at your next meeting. And this came up in large part because of the resignation earlier this year and Councilmember Barnett's appointment, and just making sure that we align the commission appointments similarly. You may decide that there's enough clarity and you don't want anything changed, but the two issues that I think Rebecca and I wanted some clarity on are listed in the staff report. And one is this: is a council member required to officially reappoint their direct appointments if they are successfully reelected to another term? I think the text is a little bit vague on that. That's one issue. The second issue is, if a council member does not complete his or her term, do their appointees continue to serve through the remainder of that person's term, or does the replacing council member have the opportunity to make their own appointments? And if you felt comfortable giving us some guidance on both those items, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. Comments from council?
We're doing questions, right?
Any questions?
Questions from council? I don't have any questions. No questions? We'll go ahead and move it out for public comment. Fred Albach.
Hi, I think that with the two issues at stake here, that it would be reasonable that the council members, I don't know, they keep them unless they want to change them for going on. But when you have someone like Kelso come in, or someone who comes in on top of another person's term, when I think about the state or federal government, when someone gets in an office, they have full powers of the office. They don't have partial powers. So I'm for the replacing council person to have full appointment powers right away. And I think that's reasonable that a decision maker has the full power of the office and not a partial power. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Anybody else rising for public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Council Barnett.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to start off on this because however the council decides tonight, I just want to make very clear that I have no intention of changing any of Councilwoman Hunley's picks. I think she made excellent picks. She selected Jim Bohar to the Planning Commission. I served with him for many years. I think he's an excellent planning commissioner. Kimberly Bladner to the CSEC. She's our sitting alcalde. She's an excellent commissioner. Michaelia Randolph to Design Review and Historic Preservation, who I also with, and Commissioner Lauren Kirshner to the Cultural and Fine Arts Commission, and Matt Wyrick to the Traffic Safety Committee. And all of them are selections I probably would have made myself. And so whatever decision the council makes tonight would really only affect a future opening or resignation, because whether or not I have the power to appoint or don't, nothing is going to change. So I just wanted to state that clearly. Number two, I know that when this policy was discussed a few years ago, there was an attempt to have commission appointments reflect the sitting council, with the idea that that was tied to the democratic process. And obviously a resignation and an appointment isn't a completely democratic process. And so that's sort of, I guess, the genesis of our discussion tonight. So that's how I wanted to start it off.
Councilmember Harrington.
So on the first topic of whether people should continue on as council members at the time the council member is reelected, I think it's important to have the council member reappoint people once they're reelected. for one, this is something we talked about. The persons who serve on these commissions have terms themselves that run. I think it's important to, not let people have unlimited terms and make sure that we have new people that are filling our commissions who are future city council members, hopefully. So that's one thing. And two, I think it's good to stop and evaluate what's happened and recognize people for their service and just take a pause. And I think the reappointment process allows that. I do think there could possibly be a better way to advertise the position so that people realize that there is someone in the position and that there is not a vacancy in the sense that there is no one in the seat. Because I think I talked to a number of people when I was reelected, and they felt that there was no one filling that position, not that the current person would need to be removed in order for them to take their seat. So I think that perhaps could be explained better. In terms of the term of the person who is on a commission, I think it's important to the dignity of our commissioners to give them the term that they are appointed to. And so if they're qualified and show up to meetings and are doing a good job, I think they should be given the respect of getting a full term. And if the city council member who appointed them for some reason can't fulfill their term, I just think it would be really disheartening to commissioners to kick them off, commissioners who are doing a good job, to kick them off because someone on the city council wasn't able to fulfill their term. And we had the experience when we changed this process of making people reapply for their commissions, and it was incredibly painful. And a lot of our commissioners felt really insulted, and it was something that will always stick with me, that people felt that we weren't valuing them, and I wouldn't want to be part of that again. So I think if people are going to do the application, go through the process of being publicly reviewed and scrutinized, and they are given a 4-year term, we should let them fulfill that.
Comments from other council members?
I agree with Councilmember Harrington.
Okay, Councilmember Ding.
I agree with the Councilmember Harrington, but this year's and the Council Barnett just coincidence, he didn't want to make any changes. But I think more respect should be sent to, the originally and appointed commissioner, and let them, fulfill and the whole term, instead of, changing them because of, and the council member is not able.
Yeah, I think the best argument for Councilwoman Harrington's policy is that, thousands of people elected Councilwoman Hundley, and she made the selections. And the 4 of you appointed me. And so if we really want to stay true to democracy, perhaps we should go with the elected councilwoman or man's selections.
Okay.
But what if we had held a special election and then a new person was elected instead of you?
Well, okay, so in that, well, then that adds another question, Dave. I mean, good point.
Yeah, I personally think the opposite. I think that, especially in the case of a special election, but I think that new council members should be allowed to appoint a planning commissioner. I think they should be granted the full rights of the office, but there's a clear majority in the other direction, and I've got no qualms with that. So there we are.
I don't want to dig too far into the weeds, but do you want us to bring back something that has a different case in a special election?
I think if there's a special election, that individual should be able to select their own commissioners.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If there's a special election, then yeah.
Okay. Can I restate then what it seems like the consensus of the council is?
No.
It would be that, and as to question 1, the council member would either reappoint or offer reappointment to the commission member that was in that seat coterminous with his or her term. if it was a reappointment, we would advertise that there is a current incumbent in that position and make that clear. And then secondly, if a council member leaves office before his or her term is completed, that person is able to stay, the commission member is able to stay through the remainder of the term to which they were appointed if the new council member is an appointed council member. If the new council member is elected through a special election, that person's term, the commission member's term ends when the council member makes a new appointment. That sound clear?
I think that's right. Yeah. It's not the case now, but before we switched over to this system, we had a lot of vacancies. We had to kind of really try to get people onto these commissions. So it's like, also, we want to make sure that we're not doing things that make people not want to be on commissions.
I have a question. The longest period of time an appointed council member could serve is 2 years, right? Meaning you could never have an appointed council member for, almost 4 years, because if there's an election, there's always an election every 2 years, correct?
No, you served the remaining balance of the term of the council member you're replacing. So if that council member were elected in November of 2021 and 10 days later died, the person who is appointed would serve for the balance of that 4-year term.
Okay,
I thought there was a thing where if there was a certain amount of time left on the term, you had to have an election.
That's what I thought, but I might.
Well, I don't have the section in front of me. I'll check that out and let you know.
Because in that case, if someone is appointed for 3 years and 11 months, in my view, they should have. This is getting a little more complicated than I thought.
Amy, it's almost time.
It's true. I actually am very cognizant of the time tonight. Yeah. Thank you, Madeline.
I didn't mean to go down a rabbit hole, but I think at least I have direction to bring something back to you, and we can go down the rabbit hole again in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Great. So do you want to tackle the last one, or time-wise?
Well, it's not 9 yet, so we have to move on. We don't even get to ask yet. Ordinance says 9. I assume we want to do 7.2. I'm fine if we.
I do want to do it.
Let's do it. All right, item 7.2.
All right, I'm going to try to share screen here.
Share it.
Okay, can you see, says City of Sonoma Quarterly Agenda Planning?
Yes.
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 Okay, did the next slide move? So now this is more of the chart? Okay. So thank you, Mayor and council members and members of the public. This is in the staff report as well. It was provided as an attachment. Basically here on the left-hand column, let me back up a tiny bit more. This is your quarterly agenda planning, which I have not done before. And it is admittedly at least a meeting too late, and I apologize for that. I think it was Rebecca that was saying, we haven't done this. And actually, Councilmember Harrington brought it up too. So I appreciate that correction. On the left-hand side here, these would be April's meetings. You've seen what we've done today. And then this is an outline of Monday, April 19th meeting. We're going to talk primarily about economic recovery in the purple tier. We'll also have a water rate discussion, and this is new to your staff report. We're trying to get Sonoma Water to come in and give a drought update because they're starting to roll out some information on that. Then here's the May meetings. We have a strategy discussion with each meeting, including how we're going to deal with special events post-COVID. There's a lot more clarity now that the state announced some recent guidance about events. Second meeting in May is an affordable housing discussion, some other items. June 2021, the first meeting will be general plan update and cemeteries. And then the 21st will be the Casa Grande parking lot along with downtown parking. Now, we can come back to this slide, but I want to just note, well, here's the next quarters. It's not quite as relevant right now. Council members have sent along to me requests to agendize items. You see what Mayor Harvey has noted about housing, economic development, a meeting with the Springs MAC, Municipal Advisory Committee. Councilmember Harrington wanted to know more about what our general plan update was, the code amendment to this for the second dispensary, which was tonight. Vice Mayor Agrimonti talked about cemeteries, improving an appeals process, memorial benches, the Casa Grande parking lot. Councilmember Barnett had a list including pedestrian safety, cemeteries, updating our financial policies, the budget, finalizing our audits, housing, economic development, and the meeting with the Springs MAC. Councilmember Ding brought up making sure that we're effectively using the stimulus money to support the city's stability and to look at free Wi-Fi. So all some pretty cool ideas. So just as a reminder, and here's where I certainly appreciate your advice here. These were your 2019 to 2020 initiatives. I won't go through each one. I tried to give a note as to status. If something jumps out at you there that I've incorrectly characterized the status, please raise that. Because I think actually, I'm not sure quite where we were with the tasting room cap and regulations and how that impacts kind of world post-COVID or mid-COVID.
So I think on the marijuana one, no, on the,
Sure.
sorry, minimum wage one, we
Yeah.
I thought we voted to get rid of the benefit option.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't solidified CPI on that, but the benefit option is gone.
Okay. So, but we haven't done CPI on the minimum wage ordinance?
Yeah.
We have, it has a 3.5% CPI, but we were gonna choose
okay,
a less static one,
But that doesn't kick in until it reaches its max anyway.
which is 2023.
So it's less urgent.
So we can kick that can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think the tasting room one is done.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. And then 2021 and forward, this was in the last time you saw this, a lot of this material was the same. Launching the housing element, including some of the things that you guys have talked about as soon as last meeting, including the growth management ordinance review, updating the development code. David Storer has that underway. Homelessness and homelessness services. That's something, I made some notes about that. I do think I need to start to bring that back to council as that gets a little bit more meat on the bones.
Yeah.
Happy to address any questions you might have right now about it. Cannabis, certainly you're rolling along on that. That was not an intentional joke. And then we did talk about SB 1383. There's a couple of more elements in there. EV charging stations, the big Biden infrastructure bill has money in there for that. So some exciting things that I think we could work on. Fergie, Director Ferguson is working on with you and Lisa Jansen and the Parks team on a couple of those items. And then it sounds like I can take off the last one. So I'm going to jump, we can jump back and forth in these. These are the kind of things that we're working on internally. I won't read each one. You see there are different categories. All the department directors chimed in to assist on this. I'll just let you take a look at it before I go further. It was in the staff report too. And then lastly, if you wanted to jump into the housing decisions that you kind of talked about last time, I did a little chart to see, I think the mayor and I had talked about, well, maybe some of these you do want to jump into right away and have those brought back to you, and some you want to take off the table. And I think this was the list, the same list that was in your staff report. I mean, I know it was what I had. Whether I characterize it correctly is unsure. I'm unsure.
Mm-hmm.
So let me jump back to this slide and see if you had any comments or impressions or wanted to offer some advice to staff on these items.
What's the annual fee study update? That's just for regular charges.
That's right. Every year, actually, I don't know if Sue could chime in on this one. I think we do a more isolated fee study on some aspects. Others are just CPI. Are you able to give us any thoughts on that, Sue?
Are you talking about regular fees on the fee study?
Yeah.
We we're working on that right now, and I have a couple of options. We do have a new fee study, not a study. We did an update of it, and we haven't. There actually hasn't been a CPI in the escalator. The last time we updated it was 2017. So we actually have it done, but I have a question on whether we want to wait until after the budget is approved so that we can get the new salary and benefits in there. And so it's a 60-day process because we have to take it to the public. So, but I was thinking we could start right after the budget was approved and then bring the new fee study. So the fee schedule.
And then what about the fees that we talked about so many times, but we never implemented, like the hotel, what are those called? They're the
Affordable housing impact fees.
Impact fees on commercial. We never finished that. We met about it like at least
Or
3
residential.
times.
Yeah, we didn't finish residential either.
Oh, where is that?
Mr. Mayor, if I can, we actually did implement the commercial in lieu fees, and we are coming back to you with policy on the residential component, whether we go with fees, in lieu fees, or whether we do changes to the inclusionary housing ordinance itself.
And
Well,
David,
no, not in lieu fees. It's impact fees.
We said that we didn't want to do in lieu fees the last time we met. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's not before us, but
no, that's a good point. I know we have discussed that as staff. David, when do you think you'd like to bring those back? Not to put you on the spot here.
I thought I put it on here.
Yeah, I wonder if I edited around too much.
I thought we were going to do that in May.
Yeah, I think it was the May 3rd one, and I summarized it down to appeal fees, and I shouldn't have.
okay.
So right here.
Okay. So, and we're clear that there's a difference between impact fees and in lieu fees.
Yeah, these were clearly impact fees.
And then David Shore, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a requirement that we allow for in lieu fees from the state now?
Yes, as it relates to rental for affordable housing, it's called AB 1505, requires us to have something other than on-site builds. So we do have to
okay.
Yeah. But that's
What's a section 115 trust?
So Section 115 trust is a special way to invest funds that you would send towards pension and other post-employment benefits, OPEB. It allows you to potentially gain a little bit more interest on those investments than, say, LAIF, the local agency investment fund, would have. It's a pretty good practice for cities, and I just wanted you folks to be able to have a chance to learn more about it and decide. You could decide not to do it or do it. But especially with the federal, I'm not calling it a windfall, but the federal stimulus, that some of that you could say, you know what, let's sock this away and invest at a little different rate for pensions.
That's something I think.
That is right.
Right. I was just going to say, Jack, we talked about that today.
Yeah, we talk about that.
So, and Dave, I saw something with the post-COVID event policy or something. I forget.
May 3rd.
Oh, special events.
Yeah. We want to have a discussion with you about what we can, it could occur on the 19th of April too. Kind of what can be done at the Plaza. What would we be encouraging this summer as summer and fall start to arrive?
Are we going to talk about the 4th of July?
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe it's a good idea to do that earlier. Because
No, I would disagree. I would say we'd have to do it as late as possible because we'll have a better COVID picture. And the state restrictions are consistently getting less restrictive. So if we want to have a better chance to I just think later is going to be better for those reasons.
Well, what council?
I agree with Mayor Harvey. Yeah, hold it for a while. Yeah.
Well, obviously, Councilwoman Harrington just referenced what everyone is already starting to talk about. Are we going to have a 4th of July?
We do need to, Councilmember Barnett, we do need to talk about that before May 3rd because May 1st is the drop dead date for purchasing fireworks.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So
We have a special meeting on April 30th.
So, Dave, for me, Madeline, I'm interested in special events because the Women's Club would actually like to do an event. I forget, we were founded September 21st, and the Women's Club, and the fountain that's in front of City Hall has never been recognized as being built by this Women's Club. Prior to that, there was a trough and something for dogs. That was taken down, and I think they actually were responsible for the fish pond and the fountain. So that's something we're researching right now. It's in all of our records, but we want to make sure. But we would like to do something to commemorate that, and then possibly ask to do some time of a plaque or something, because everybody thinks the Kiwanis Club did that because they did the cement path around the fountain. They did not do the fountain.
Very cool.
That's great. The history is always
Hey,
amazing.
Dave, could we go back to the council member requests?
Yes.
So, okay, just on the easy ones, I wish we could have a thing to write on here. So for Madeline's, the cemetery is agendized it's planned.
Right.
Sorry, hold on.
Okay, so her, the appeals process, that's part of the fees, right?
Yep.
And that's
planned. Oh, Madeline, why are we just doing everything Madeline wants all the time? Okay, the benches.
Councilmember Harrington, again. We are going to have the appeal fee update, I believe, for the first meeting in May. So that's ready to go.
Okay, great. And then the benches, did I see that on there?
Yep.
Okay, that's on there, and Casa Grande is on there too.
Yep.
Okay, now we know who's running the city council. No offense, Logan. Okay. And then,
I'm taking.
okay. And then I'm just gonna do easier ones. So we did the second cannabis for me. Okay, and then I have a question about that with everything else. Can we go to the next page?
Let me make it, let me see if I can do this right. Stop annotating. Oh, come on. There we go. All right.
Okay, and then, okay.
All right.
Okay. And then on Kelso's, do we have finalizing audits on there somewhere? We do, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one is done.
Cemetery, yeah.
The cemetery is on there.
Oh my God, Dave, did you tell them or whoever, Jeff, about
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what are the items that aren't agendized that
Yeah,
are
you
still
know,
left to talk about.
The ones that are not are the joint meeting with the MAC, and that's actually
Okay.
fairly easy. And then
Yeah.
Councilmember Ding's Wi-Fi study, and I need to talk with staff about that. I mean, I think it's a great idea, obviously.
Yes,
and then-
later I will give you some contacts and other city. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that
think
idea, Jen.
Colma has,
Pittsburgh.
I think the town of Colma has free Wi-Fi.
So I guess my only question is, and I obviously have never done a general plan, it's how does this housing stuff work in conjunction with the general plan update so that we're not dragging it out, but also that we're doing it in an organized fashion? I just was wondering, Dave, if you have ideas about how do those specific items, work with the general plan update, or are they separate, or?
Dave's
Housing element is part
Yeah,
of it.
I can take a shot at that.
Either, David.
Well, we'll go with the lowest D number right now, D2. We have there's only one element of the general plan that has to be modified. And in this case, our housing element is to be modified every 5 years. And we currently have the RENA process going on as we speak. And so the first thing for us to do in our general plan is to get a revised housing element. And the toughest chore there therein is the vacant land analysis. So we're beginning that now. At your next council meeting, we'll be coming with a consultant to assist us in that housing element update. Then you can start to attack the other elements of the general plan, such as land use, circulation, which the city did, as you recall, in 2015, 2016. So we have to pick those elements that we need to address, but the housing element is the one that we actually have a timeline on us. I can tell you that the city of Sonoma has updated its general plan roughly every 10 years. And we are behind in that regard, but I think your council has directed us to not only do the housing element per se, and then other elements as we see them, but we're also trying to fix the biggest issue that's problematic for us as far as housing and things, and that is our development code. So that's why those things are being juggled.
I guess like specifically the list of Logan's items, can we see that one? Okay, so on these items, just because I'm totally unfamiliar with how the process works, are these things that would be outcomes of a housing element update in the general plan, or are they separate? So how do, how does this normally work in conjunction with updating your general plan?
Again, pretty much everything on here is relating to our housing element, and HCD will ultimately be the ones that approve or deny it, or certify it or not. But all of the topics are part of the housing element. Even as you see 3B, you can see there that we have a municipal services review. The state will be looking to make sure that we have enough sewer or water to relate to all of the areas within our UGB, for example. The growth management ordinance, they look upon that dimly with respect to preventing housing from occurring. So we have to kind of go through all of that kind of analysis. Pretty much everything in there is relating to a housing element.
So then in terms of doing this in conjunction, taking these actions in conjunction with the housing element update, we get do we have some sort of like bullet point of the timeline on that, or how does it?
Yeah, we're in what's called the sixth cycle, Amy, where we have basically right now, we've received our regional housing allocation of 330 units.
Yeah.
That will be certified by the state back to ABAG. ABAG then has an appeal period for jurisdictions to appeal that lasts for the rest of this year. And at the end of this year, we'll have 1 year to update our housing element to have it certified the following January, because that's when it becomes effective. The 8-year period becomes effective January 2023 to 2031.
Let me ask Logan. So Logan, when you, or Mayor Harvey, when you put these are your items, right?
Yep.
When you put them on, were you imagining them being done in conjunction with the housing element update, or separately, or what were how did you come up with these specific items, and what was your timeline in thinking about them?
My goal is to get these. I think that a lot of these are necessary improvements in order to speed the creation of housing in the city of Sonoma. And my goal was to move the discussion and focus on these things. So whether it's part of a housing element or not doesn't make a ton of difference to me. Although if it were to push the large discussion or the discussion of a lot of these items back to roll it into a housing element, that would be something that I would not be happy about, certainly.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, some of these things, for example, number 4,
right,
you don't have to wait for the housing element per se to kick off. We're in the process of doing that as we speak. We'll be talking about amending the growth ordinance shortly. So these things
There's a number of the things that are currently in process, certainly. Things that I would love to see happen, if we want to break it up and to look at, can you just stay on that one?
Yeah, sorry.
Things if we could, I would like to have, discussion sooner. I would love to get an analyzation of what government-owned land exists within city limits that could be used for affordable housing. And we haven't had public comment, but we can do that after this, I think, unless Jeff interrupts me.
I think we're still asking questions.
Yeah, so for me, I'm thinking about the number 5. I would really like to see relatively soon. because I think that's critical for us to know what land is available for free within the UGB and within city limits. We could maybe get for low cost to build for affordable housing. I would love to start a discussion about number 6. If you remember when we did our Housing Our Community series, almost every single table that was part of that community series targeted West Natchez Street for future growth. I think we should start that process, but that may be something that's bigger as part of the general plan. We're already working on a number of the other ones in the housing ad hoc. We're going to start a discussion about the GMO. I think that that's really important. So, yeah,
Okay. So I think
Yes. Yeah, that is right. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And also anything related with the zoning change or and the UGB, those stuff, definitely planning commission should involve those kinds of stuff. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And they are. Currently, the way this is, I mean, in all honesty, I want to speed these things along as quickly as possible. But a lot of this stuff is already kind of coming to our housing ad hoc committee that's really started ramping up meetings the last
So could I interject here for a moment? Is Jeff still on? Or he's gone? Is Jeff still on?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jeff, whenever you get a chance, would you explain to Dave what happened years ago with respect to the affordable housing in the mobile home units? Because the city manager took on we had a rental, I don't know what it was called, rental board or something.
Rent stabilization.
Right, and they never met. So what was decided is that city manager would oversee the mobile home park, the affordable housing. I'm simplifying it. However, Jeff, what's been happening, and I might be wrong, but this is what I hear, that if somebody dies and the company comes in and says, oh, to the kids, there's so much trouble. You don't need to do this. We will buy this from you. So then they remove it. They put in a big manufactured housing, and it's no longer affordable. And they're chipping away in there. I could be wrong, but this is just what people are saying. And whomever comes in as our city manager, I think they need to be aware that they are called the administrator. It was, Jeff, it was huge. It was huge.
Yeah, the problem is our current rent stabilization ordinance controls space rentals and not the rental of the mobile home itself. And that's where the landlords are able to step in and buy the rental, the mobile home itself, and then rent it out at certainly market rates.
Right.
If the council wants to take a look at that, we certainly can.
So that used to be what we considered some of it to be affordable. So I thought I'd just mention it.
I appreciate that. So,
Can
Mayor
we see
Harvey-
Logan's list again?
Yeah, sure. Try to share the screen again. Now, where did this go? It's after 9. I'm starting to fall apart here. Let's see.
Likewise.
Come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you
All right.
remember those private owners flew in their planes from the mobile home parks
Yeah.
in their private jets?
Like Congress.
Is that sharing the right screen?
It's blank.
Ah,
It's a nice background, though.
thank you. Let me stop sharing. Try this again. All of a sudden, my computer is verifying old programs. Great. That's really helpful.
Okay. Well,
Give me a minute again.
Maybe we can have public comment while he's working on that and then come back to it.
oh, good idea.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Looks like Fred Olebeck would like to speak.
Yay, Fred.
Good evening. I've been waiting all night for this moment. I think it's really important that the council emphasizes the housing aspects of the quarterly and yearly agenda here, just to keep the heat on. It's been an issue that's a long-term salient issue for the city, so I think it's really important that it gets front and center. And I did send a personal opinion today, what I thought was a knockdown cold case for why the city needs 50% of new housing to be affordable housing, given the demographic figures that I cited. I think in terms of Logan's list, there are another list that an affordable housing overlay would be an interesting thing to look at, like the Cambridge overlay or in Berkeley. That the county density bonus program is something that's worth looking at. That's an award-winning density bonus program that has a 40% inclusion, which is really substantial. Let's see, and sort of along with affordable housing overlay, make by right for affordable housing. I agree with the land procurement point that Logan made, and then also have some staff to wrangle up some money. I think that was in a previous point that Logan made. And also for the Housing Our Community series, I think that all the recommendations that have been made there should be equally considered, because the aggregate of all the tables came up with, I believe, 725 units over 10 years, with 53% being deed restricted affordable housing. So I think that if the Housing Our Community series is going to be used, then that should be used too. You know, part of it should be cherry picked or not, or said that it's not representative of the community, because if some of it's not representative, then all of it's not representative. So I think that particular figure for deed restricted housing represents the studied opinion of all the people who were saying this is a serious problem, and we need to address a lot of deed restricted affordable housing. Basically, I just really want to support any way that the council can emphasize to the planning commission and the housing element process ways that they would like to see housing be steered in the city through the housing element process, and just keep the fire turned up on that burner. I think it's really important. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Fred. I see Dave Ransom.
Good evening. Dave Ransom. I live in Santa Rosa. I go to church in Sonoma. I'm not going to, I am here, of course, for and with the Sonoma Valley Housing Group, and I go to Sonoma United Methodist. I'm not going to go into the reasons that affordable housing should be on your agenda and what we'd like to see tonight. You're aware of all that. You've had our position papers past and present. The last one just this morning, so I won't repeat that part. Every member of the council that the housing group has met with over the last many years, including all of you making decisions here tonight, every member has supported affordable housing here in Sonoma. For all those years, we have represented Sonoma Valley renters. That's the majority of us and our friends and families, renters. 2 or 3 times we've brought a couple of hundred people together, listened to what they told us, written it up and sent it in. We like Logan's list. I think that this might be something you'd really like to get your teeth into. Housing folks affordably, housing the people who work here, something with deep and lasting importance to the city. So we urge that you put affordable housing on your agenda for this quarter. Make this Sonoma's year of housing. Build on the outcome of the Housing Our Community series that was held last year. Get a good, robust discussion going. Thanks, and thanks for being there.
Thank you, Dave. Bring it back to council.
I think I can share my screen now.
I believe in you.
Did that work?
It did.
All right. Thank you for your belief. What I was thinking, Mayor Harvey, was that actually we would bring these issues back to you with some, kind of more robust background at that strategy discussion on second meeting in May. so that we weren't going out too far, but we were coming back to you with something more robust than making you make decisions tonight. That was kind of our goal, if that seemed to work for you.
That works for me. I just want to keep this moving, and I know a lot of these things are already moving, but yeah, that's fine.
And then can we just get like a overlay of how the housing element works with this?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if we make this the year of housing / the housing element, and these are all included parts to it, and we start having this discussion, then I'd be supportive of that path too. I would just like to address all or most of those items this year.
My screen sharing is dying. There, it's back.
And it's
The sign.
I feel like we have enough, I mean, David can comment, or Sue. I feel like we have enough direction, unless you would like to give us any more, but this was hopefully a good exercise.
Go ahead.
I liked it.
Yes, the one issue that I didn't see on there that I had brought up sort of at the end, obviously with what recently happened, was pedestrian safety. And the Traffic Safety Committee hasn't met since 2018, and that still is the case. And in the next few months, it would be great if they could meet more frequently. Obviously, they're focused on the Train Town, Ultimate Drone situation, but obviously there are many areas within town where pedestrian safety is an issue. And so it'd be great to sort of get that committee going again, so the public knows that this council is addressing these issues and trying to improve them, number one. And if we do ever have a joint meeting with the Springs MAC, perhaps that could be a topic of discussion.
Yeah. Well, if we can move on to item 8, I can provide some update on that too.
I wanted to make sure, Vice Mayor Agrimonti, you had mentioned the benches, and I
I saw that.
Okay, I didn't place that. I mean, I'll talk with staff and come back to you with an action plan on what you wanted.
Okay, because I took a picture of it and sent it to Bill Hutchinson.
Okay.
He was the gentleman that spoke.
All right.
Dave, if you wouldn't mind, can you just kind of give us an idea of what your belief the direction is from council? Just kind of summarize.
With benches or with everything in general? Okay, it is to follow the outline that I just presented in terms of your agenda, including bringing back a lot of the housing items on the second meeting in May. I'm going to follow up secondly with Vice Mayor Agrimonti about the benches. I'm going to let you, Mayor Harvey, comment about an action plan for pedestrian safety, but I'm happy to talk with the Public Works Director about moving the Traffic Safety Committee up to something more regular for a short period of time. Did I miss anything? I think that was my takeaway.
Yeah.
And we have Jack's wireless thing.
I'll sit down with Jack and see
Sure.
what-
Yeah, we share some of the information together.
Okay.
I have some contacts. Mhm.
And then Councilmember Harrington mentioned making sure that when we talk about housing, we talk about that in the context of the general plan and how the timing works with that.
Yeah. Yeah. If we don't have to do double work, that's always good.
Yeah.
I think, we've been moving pretty well on the ad hoc. Go ahead, Councilman.
Yeah, I just want to briefly say, I've only been on the council for a month, but I've followed a lot of these issues for a long time. And just this chart that was put together, talk about affordable housing, which we've all wanted to talk about for years, the Casa Grande parking lot, which we've all wanted to talk for years, cemetery, which we've all wanted to talk about for years, the general plan update we've all wanted to talk about for years. This is, at least, I know it's getting late, but I'm sort of excited that this is all coming down the pike. And
Well,
so
and Kelso, here is how I see it. It's people business versus city business.
Mhm.
You'll get sick of hearing that, but I think the things that you just mentioned were people business.
I agree, and I'm excited. So I just want to thank the council and our staff for moving forward on some of these very important issues.
But it definitely helps that we're kind of, hopefully, knock on wood, a couple times moving out of COVID, because that has taken up a lot of time. So hopefully we can kind of get back to the business of the city here fairly quickly.
Yeah, we've got about 3 months before we have to start worrying about fires, so let's get it done.
Let's get Logan in a parade this year.
Eat it.
Yeah.
I want to throw a baseball, eat a corn dog, and be in a parade. That's my goals this year.
Fair. Totally fair.
All right, we're gonna move on to 8 councilmember reports and comments. So, after the recent tragedy that happened on Highway 12 near Maxwell Village, I had written a letter to our supervisor, Susan Gorin, and included Maite from the Springs MAC, requesting a joint meeting of the City Council and the Springs MAC to discuss traffic safety issues specifically. That hasn't happened clearly because otherwise you guys would have attended that meeting. But we did have a meeting today at 11 a.m., not that the time matters, to discuss with Caltrans, Public Works, County Public Works, and our traffic safety officer, Sergeant Barraz, the issues of, specifically, a little bit in the Springs, that intersection right at Taco Bell and Verano and Highway 12, where Taco Bell and McDonald's are, and that the end of the bike path that creates a very tempting crossing to get to Maxwell Park, which is where the gentleman did pass away and was struck by a vehicle. A lot of items were discussed. One of them potentially being closing down the Lomita Avenue exit, so you can leave right off of Highway 12 Lomita Avenue, which makes a really difficult context if you're going to walk or bike up from the bike path towards that intersection at Maxwell Village Park. We also discussed additional lighting and different ways to stripe it. So there were short-term and long-term plans, adding some additional bike lanes to try to help slow traffic. There was a light discussion around reducing the lanes into just one lane the other way, but there was a feeling from Caltrans that was not a good idea just from a traffic congestion kind of idea. Long term, there was a discussion about the possibility of having a roundabout at that location. We're talking several years in the future, obviously. And so we're going to bring back some information about all those ideas. Afterwards, Sergeant Barraz and I went out to the site where the gentleman was killed and really looked at it. And I think, both of us were in agreement that getting rid of that Lomita exit, which is in county, would really help with the bike ability of going out of the bike path and then up to Maxwell Village Park. We also discussed the potential need of extending the gate that blocks you from crossing over into Maxwell further up to the Nelson parking lot. Now that wouldn't prevent somebody from walking across the street, but 2 things would happen if you block the Lomita. Number one, it would make it, right now, it's not illegal to walk across all 4 of those roads. It's not technically jaywalking because there's 3 intersections there. If there's 2 crosswalked intersections, now it's jaywalking. With the 3rd one there, which is Lomita, it is not jaywalking. So right now they're legal to do it. And also, if you force people to walk all the way up to the Nelson parking lot, now you can see the cars coming over the hill. And so while we accept that, what we were discussing is while we accept that the human behavior is that people are still going to walk across that street illegally without a crosswalk, at least now they'll know how cars are coming around the corner. And so walking across that street wouldn't necessarily be a death sentence. The gentleman also got struck by a car heading towards the Springs from that Maxwell parking lot. And extending it further up to Nelson would also put them further away from that intersection and possibly create some amount of safety there. So there are discussions going on with Caltrans. We're talking about how we can improve safety on that road specifically. Afterwards, we had received an email about a homeless encampment and some kind of difficulties as far as what was going on there. And so, I talked to Sergeant Barraz a little bit about that as well. But, obviously there's no official direction. There's no official plan. We're going to have Caltrans come back to us in about a month and a half and kind of update myself and Susan Gorin around that issue. So I'll continue to bring those updates to this council as they happen.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Logan, is there any discussion about Donald with the development?
Donald. Oh, the Donald Street to add sidewalks. Susan Gorin brought up adding additional sidewalks up to Donald on Highway 12. Is that what you're talking about?
I think the development they're supposed to be going in and they weren't included in the Springs, in the program. I don't know.
I haven't heard any updates on that. That wasn't the
I-
topic of this meeting. So I don't know. I know that the Spring Specific Plan is kind of in litigation right now. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, for that update. I think that's very interesting. Was there any discussion about, I know we don't have the money for this, but perhaps Caltrans or the county does a pedestrian bridge?
No discussions over a pedestrian bridge. And I think there's, and I see Jeff getting worried about the Brown Act right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the time for brief reports on your activities. Brief is the operative word. So let's keep it brief.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you.
No real discussions here, just reports.
I would like to report, this morning I went to the county, have the water special meeting. And the drought weather, it's really, really serious. We experienced the historic low for the reservoir in Montesino County. And then no any good resolution and we have today, then we passed the budget and just reduce the budget by $1 million and just cut the capital investment. So they basically, and today we mentioned about the resolution and they mentioned about the increase on the local supply. That means on the groundwater. And the groundwater, as it is very valuable stuff. It's difficult for us, especially for the Sonoma Valley. So just bring your attention, on this the water. And fortunately, next on the meeting we're discussing the detail. And also, we can read in the newspaper, Press Democrat, and during the weekend mention about this. Serious.
Thank you, Jack, for that update. Any other council member updates? City manager? Jeff Walter, attorney at law?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a startling report that my advice about Mr. Barnett's taking a council member's place for the balance of that council member's term was not quite accurate. There is a limitation, and that is as follows. If the vacancy occurs in the first half of a term of office of the council member who's retiring or not being reelected or resigning, and there are at least 130 days left until the next general election, the appointee holds office until the next general election. On the other hand, if a vacancy occurs in the first half of the resigning council member's term of office and there are at least 130 days left until the next general election, or if the vacancy occurs in the second half of the term of office of the retiring council member, the appointee holds office for the unexpired term. So there is a limitation.
Okay.
That should make that easier, that policy easier, yeah.
Jeff, we forgive you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it for us, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor.
You have Bible with you. You have Bible.
All right.
Call it.
On to item number 11, which is adjournment. I'd like to open up for public comment. Let's close this thing. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.